But I think we have to be careful about overstepping our bounds and doing stuff that I don't believe we should be in the middle of. I think the micromanagement, when we start talking about purchases for $3,000 or $5,000, I think we are going way beyond what our role is. Now, I understand the larger purchases moving up towards $100,000, and there's room for discussion there. But I think that, there's a few things we have to look at. When was the last time these numbers have been increased? Why are the accounting firms telling us that we need to be looking at this? Those are some of the questions that I'm going to be throwing out there. But I think that we have to be very careful as a board to be getting in the middle of some of these purchases that are extremely low and that we should not be in the middle of. We are wasting a lot of time and effort on this, and our board meeting's already long enough. And not that that's the end all be all, but so that's what I'll add in there. So with all that being said, is there a motion to postpone this to the next policy meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. So we have a motion and a second to postpone the policy 672.1, purchasing and bidding requirements, to the next policy meeting, which is on, what's the date there?
The 11th.
May 11th. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, that brings us up to the next meeting date will be Tuesday, May 11th, and the time will be determined, I'm guessing. And that brings us to an adjournment. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
All right, great. All those indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The motion is adjourned, or the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Dan, you call this next meeting to order. Let me put that on the agenda so I can take some notes.
We'll just take 1 minute for committee members to catch their breath, and we'll begin in 2 minutes. All righty. Are we good?
I believe so.
All right. It is 7:19, and I'd like to call the organizational meeting to order. May I have roll call, please?
Yes. Anderson,
Present.
Jacobs,
Here.
Sean Levy, Wong,
Present. No.
Here.
Delgado,
Present.
Amy Levy,
Here.
and Miller.
Present.
All members are present with Miller, Wong, and Sean Levy in the boardroom.
Thank you. May I have approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right. First order of business is the election of president. I will now open the floor for nominations for board president. No? Oh, sorry. I apologize. We need to have the oath. Yes, I skipped over D.
Would I need to do that as a clerk?
Yes.
If you Google oath of office for school board, it'll come right up. Did you find it? Board Member Delgado?
I did not.
Okay. Yep, I can do that. My apologies. Hang on, it's. I'm getting things in the way that are popping up on my screen. Okay. Can you see that, Maria? Or, yep, can you see that? Or not?
Okay.
Yep, okay.
And this would be for both board member Levy and board member Anderson, correct?
Correct.
And we do them individually?
You can do them either way.
Okay. If I could have them both stand up and raise their right hand. Thank you. And please repeat after me. I, Sean Levy, and Spencer Anderson, having been elected to the office of school board, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God. Yay! Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you. Congratulations to you both. Moving on into 2A, we will open up elections for the office of board president. So I will now open the floor for nominations for board president.
I nominate Board Member Megan Miller for president.
Board Member Miller, do you accept?
Thank you, I do.
Are there any other nominations for office of board president? Are there any other nominations for board president? Calling once more, are there any other nominations for board president? Hearing none, nominations for board president are now closed. As there is one nominee for board president, does the board wish to vote via paper ballot, show of hands, roll call, or vote of acclamation?
Roll call, please.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Anderson.
Aye.
Levy. Amy. Sorry.
Aye.
Jacobs.
Aye.
Sean Levy.
Aye.
Wong.
Aye.
Delgado.
Aye.
Miller.
I'll abstain.
The motion carries 6-0 to 1 abstention. So Megan Miller won the votes.
Congratulations, Board President Miller. You are our new acting president, or our new president of the school board.
Thank you very much, and thank you, everybody.
I will now let you preside over the remainder of the agenda.
All right, sounds good. Let's do this. All right. Are there any nominations for the office of vice president at this time?
I nominate John Wong.
Are there any other nominations for the office of vice president at this time?
Well, I'll be nominating myself, Sean Levy.
All right. Are there any other nominations for the office of vice president at this time? Hearing none, I'd like to ask if we could vote electronically. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
All right.
How is that
Roll
done?
call.
Okay. Does anybody else want to do roll call?
I would like roll call.
Okay. Any other opinions on that? All right, then I'm going to take it as consensus for roll call. I'm so sorry, Ms. Shope, if we could have a roll call, please.
Sorry, I have to get back to the other page. Okay, Jacobs?
So I say the person's name?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
John Wong?
Hang on just 1 second, please. Okay, Sean Levy?
Sean Levy.
Maria Delgado?
John Wong.
John Wong?
John Wong.
Spencer Anderson?
Sean Levy.
Amy Levy?
Sean.
Sean Levy?
Okay, and Megan Miller.
Sean Levy?
The votes are 3 for John Wong and 4 for Sean Levy.
Congratulations. At this time, is there a nomination for the office of the clerk?
I nominate Maria Delgado.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the office of the clerk at this time? Are there any other nominations for the office of clerk at this time? Last call. Are there any other nominations for the office of clerk at this time? Hearing none. Would the board favor a vote by acclamation for board member Delgado?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hearing none other, then congratulations, board member Delgado.
Thank you.
At this time, are there nominations for the election of our secretary?
I nominate Michelle Shope.
Are there any other nominations for the office of board secretary? Are there any other nominations for the office of board secretary? Hearing none. Would the board favor a vote by acclamation for Michelle Shope?
Yes.
Excellent. Congratulations, Ms. Shope. At this time, are there nominations for the office of treasurer? Are there nominations for the office of treasurer?
I'll nominate Stephanie Jacobs.
Are there any other nominations for the office of treasurer? Hearing none, would the board be in favor of a vote by acclamation for Stephanie Jacobs to be our treasurer?
Yes.
Looks like we have consensus. Congratulations, Stephanie Jacobs. You are our treasurer.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. At this time, we are moving into item number 3, which is the appointments. Item 3A for CISA 2 representative. I've currently been elected into a 3-year term for CISA 2 representative, so I will continue with that appointment. Although when we get to committee structure, I do have some comments on that. So we'll put a pin in that for right now and move on to item 3B. The appointment of the board parliamentarian was a new role that we discussed at our last board retreat. And while it would give me great pleasure to appoint a board parliamentarian, I want to check in with the board and ask if we would be comfortable postponing the appointment of board parliamentarian until we have policy to delineate the responsibilities. Does anybody have thoughts or comments on that topic?
I do. I don't think that the position of board parliamentarian should be an appointment, but rather a board office. I recommend that policy 141.2 be amended to include the office of board parliamentarian, and that person should not begin serving until a training program is completed. And I also think specifically that this matter should go to policy and personnel for the appropriate policy edits.
Thank you for your comments. Are there other thoughts and comments on this topic for item 3B? Hearing none, do I have the consensus of the board to postpone item 3B and move on to 3C?
I would like, to direct this to policy and personnel so it's not hanging out there. We know exactly where this is going.
Sounds good. Would we need a motion to do that, or are we okay with consensus?
I'm fine with consensus if everyone else is.
Do we have consensus? Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Board Member Jacobs.
No, I'm sorry. I just was saying I'm fine with consensus.
I am as well.
Me too.
All right, it looks like we have consensus to move. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Board Member Anderson. Thank you very much. So it sounds like we have consensus to move item 3B, the appointment of board parliamentarian, to policy and personnel to be considered as part of policy 141.2. Moving on then to item 3C, committee appointments. So at this time, I'm going to recommend appointments for chairs and for committee roles. If you're appointed as chair, you have the right to decline. So I'd like to start with Planning and Budget Committee. Board Member Wong, would you accept chair as the Planning and Budget Committee?
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Board Member Sean Levy and Board Member Anderson, would both of you accept committee appointments to Planning and Budget Committee?
Yes.
I do.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, Chair Wong. Moving on to the Committee of Oversight and Finance. Board Member Sean Levy, would you accept an appointment as chair to Oversight and Finance?
I do.
Board Members Delgado and Jacob, would you accept appointments as part of the Oversight and Finance Committee?
Yes.
I will.
All right, thank you very much, and congratulations, Chair Levy. Moving on to Policy and Personnel Committee, Board Member Amy Levy, would you accept appointment as chair to the Policy and Personnel Committee?
Yes.
Thank you. And Board Members Jacobs and Delgado, would you accept appointments as serving as members of the Policy and Personnel Committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody, and congratulations, Chair Amy Levy. Just to note, Policy and Personnel Committee, Oversight and Finance Committee, and Planning and Budget Committees, when they next meet, will appoint a vice chair. So that will be determined at those next committee meetings. Thank you very much. I believe that covers item 3C for committee appointments. Is that correct? All right. We are going to move along then to item 3D, agency appointments. All right, so Board Member Wong, let me make sure I have this correct. So is this, so for agency appointments, I believe we're covering our WASB representative, our legislative liaison, our employee relations liaison, and our TIF representative, is that correct?
And alternative.
And the alternative for WASB, excellent. All right, Board Member John Wong, would you accept an appointment as our representative to WASB?
And that'd be the delegate, not the
I'm
alternate,
so
correct?
sorry. Yes, the delegate.
Yes.
Excellent. Board Member Amy Levy, would you accept the appointment as our second WASB delegate alternate?
Yes.
Thank you. And just to note, multiple board members can attend the WASB conference for those interested. Thank you very much, both of you, for your interest in those roles. For Legislative Liaison, Board Member Amy Levy, are you willing to continue on in your role?
Yes.
Thank you very much. For Employee Relations, Board Member Sean Levy, would you be interested in being our Employee Relations representative?
I will.
Thank you very much. And circling back to you again, Board Member Wong, would you be interested in being our TIF representative?
How often does that meet?
That's a great question. I believe it's rare. Ms. Shope, did you want to offer some comments on that?
They only meet when there is a TIF that's coming due, and the city will usually send a letter letting you know when that meeting would be. And I don't believe we've had a TIF meeting for the last 2 years, 3 years. Joanne is going to come up and give you some more information.
That's fine.
Typically, I am the representative for the TIF meetings. In my 5 years, I've never had a board member participate. It was me or the superintendent representing the TIF. We did have one 2 years ago.
Okay, so what's the purpose of the representative?
That's a great question. It was a role that we were asked to appoint, and do you feel like it would be appropriate to appoint a board member?
I would feel it more appropriate to have it to a business administrator because they are very rare appointments, and that comes into our budget play. So regardless, the business manager should be there as part of that committee.
Sounds good to me. Okay. Are there questions from board members on the subject matter of TIF representative before I move on? Thoughts or comments? Hearing none, that concludes item 3, board president appointments. So we're on to item 4. Dr. Keiser, would you like to make appointments to Parks and Rec and other committees?
Thank you, Board President Miller. Board Member Anderson, would you consider continuing as our representative to Parks and Recs?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. And Board Member Wong, would you consider remain the alcohol and beverage rep?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Congratulations to you both.
Thank you very much, Dr. Keiser. And that brings us to item 5, which is adjournment. Is there any other board business for the organizational meeting that needs to take place at this time? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned. Why don't we take a minute and then we will transition into our business meeting. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, good evening. The time is now 7:45, and I would like to call our board business meeting to order. Ms. Schultz, may we have roll call, please?
Wong,
Present.
Miller,
Present.
Sean Levy,
Present.
Amy Levy,
Here.
Stephanie Jacobs,
Present.
Kana, would you like to lead us in the pledge? Thank you.
Stephanie Jacobs.
She said here.
Did she just say present? Okay.
Present.
Okay. Maria Delgado,
Present.
Spencer Anderson.
Present.
All members are present with Miller, Wong, and Sean Levy in the boardroom.
Thank you very much. At this time, would somebody like to make a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion at this time? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you. Moving on to item 1D, I'd like to ask our student board representative, Kana Wong, to please lead us in the pledge. If everybody would please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
Thank you very much, Mr. Wong. That brings us to item 2A, announcements. At this time, I'd like to ask our most recent sworn-in board member, Vice President Sean Levy, to please read our announcements at this time.
Here are the announcements for Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. There has been a lot of media coverage this past month from Madison and Rockford television stations, Wisconsin Public Radio, WCLO Radio, and others. Our top stories included twins, Carolyn and Kimberly Guevara, being accepted to Brown University, our Grow Your Own Multicultural Teacher Scholarship, our hydroponic gardens in our elementary schools, and Matthew Bernier, a fifth grade student at Fruzen, winning the Department of Natural Resources Keep Wildlife Wild poster contest. Check out the district's Facebook page or the news tab on the district's website for all the great things happening in our district. For Beloit Memorial High School students from the Future Business Leaders of America, Jaden Cox, Naoki Nikora, Gabriel Wick, and Kana Wong meet with second grade students at Converse Elementary to teach a class on financial literacy. Black Hawk Community Bank donated piggy banks to all the second grade students. Summer school registration is open. Please visit any school's website to learn more information about our 5-day-a-week engaging in-person summer school program. The School District of Beloit stands against racism and supports the work of the YWCA Rock County in a recent campaign spearheaded by the YWCA Rock County to build community among those who work for racial justice and to raise awareness about the negative impact of institutional and structural racism in our communities. The school district provided more than 25 photos of staff standing united together with signage reading, "The School District of Beloit stands against racism." These photos were shared with the YWCA and posted on the district's Facebook and Instagram accounts, as well as posted on the district's news tab. We continue to support the work of the YWCA Rock County. Teacher Appreciation Week begins on Monday, May 3rd. In honor of this upcoming week, I would like to read a joint statement from the board and the district. The School District of Beloit and the Board of Education respect and admire the dedication, compassion, and passion of our teachers and support staff. As the last several months have shown, our teachers are resilient, creative, and strong. They are committed to engaging our students in learning while caring for their social and emotional well-being. They make a difference in the lives of our students and families through their ability to continue to teach and care for students, despite the many challenges this pandemic has brought with it. We want you to know we are grateful and thankful and truly appreciate how hard you work for our district and students. This concludes the announcements for April 27th.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 2B, and I'd like to invite Ms. Christopa to recognize Beloit staff and families.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. Tonight, the district wants to take a moment to recognize and honor our students and families and staff. As we move toward the conclusion of Term 4, this certainly has been a long and unprecedented year of support and collaboration between our staff, students, and families. Parents and guardians converted their homes into virtual classrooms, juggled assignments, learning materials, technology, and more. The commitment on the part of our families to support their children and their learning goes above and beyond the words expressed in this recognition. The African proverb, "It takes a village to raise a child," is more evident today than ever before. We want our SDB families to know that we appreciate their unwavering dedication and unity in their children's education and well-being. Helen Keller said it best, "Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much." Thank you, SDB students and families and staff, for your togetherness with us in the support of your child's education this past year. And together we remain Beloit proud.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Ms. Christopa. At this time, I'd like to bring us to item 3, which is public comment. I believe we have people here willing to make comments. Ms. Shoup, do we have email as well?
We have no emails, but I have one person who would like to make a comment.
Perfect. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to read our board policy spiel here. All right, norms for public comment during board meetings. Citizens are welcome to attend all open meetings of the Board of Education. Robert's Rules of Order will be followed at all times. Persons attending board meetings are expected to conduct themselves in a respectful and courteous manner that models appropriate behavior for our students. Persons wishing to comment are expected to comply with the following norms in order to maintain a respectful and orderly meeting and to protect all persons, including members of the public, district employees, and district students from personal attacks or discussion of confidential matters in a public forum. Comments should be directed to members of the Board of Education and not district employees, students, or other members of the public in attendance at the meeting. Comments that attack any individual personally or professionally or are derogatory or demean others will not be tolerated. Personnel matters or concerns regarding specific district personnel are not appropriate topics to be addressed during an open meeting and should be handled in accordance with the district policy and procedures. Concerns or questions regarding students will not be allowed. Comments regarding another individual's membership in a legally protected class, i.e. race, sexual orientation, religion, etc., is strictly prohibited. Response from the board will be limited to clarifying inaccurate information, seeking additional information from the citizen, or acknowledging that the citizen has been understood. The board will not debate with the citizen, and the board may not take action on an item raised during public comment that is not on the meeting notice or agenda. The chair will interrupt and rule a citizen who violates any of these norms out of order. If ruled out of order by the chair, a person's opportunity to address the board will end immediately and the microphone will be turned off. A citizen who violates these norms may be restricted from making public comments at future meetings. Thank you for participation and courtesy. Go ahead, please. Somebody have a timer?
So I have Greg Schneider.
Got it? Okay, thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Greg Schneider. I live at 703 Milwaukee Road here in Beloit. I was extremely concerned with Dr. Keyser's comments during the Policy and Personnel Committee regarding transparency and timely posting of information on board docs. I am also concerned that 2 committee members supported that action. For example, during the discussion on the extracurricular salary schedule during the Policy and Personnel Committee, it was stated that the schedule on board docs was not the correct version, even though the board had received the correct version. It was approved and sent to the full board, and it's on tonight's consent agenda, thus to be approved without discussion. By the time the committee approved the salary schedule, it was after 5 o'clock, the deadline for submitting written public comments, which is why I'm here in person. Now, I understand Dr. Keyser's concerns about public feedback on agenda items before the meeting or the presentation. However, that is what is supposed to happen, since the board does not give time to comment before they act on agenda items. The administration's response to the public and to the newspaper in the recent past was very inappropriate, unprofessional, and damaging to the trust of the community. The newspaper article on committee and board agenda has been beneficial to encourage community members to be engaged with the board and the school system. It is the role of the public to share their thoughts and concerns with the Board of Education. The removal of agenda items is a board decision to allow time to take another look at the agenda item before bringing it back for consideration. Having items being approved and sent to the full board the same night and placed in the consent agenda removes the ability of the community to prepare comments and send them to the board before the item is voted on by the board, thus denying the public their right to understand and comment on proposed actions of the board. The board appears to no longer be interested in transparency and public input. This will further the community's distrust of the board and the school system. It should be the norm to have the time between the committee's actions and the board meeting, not the exception. I encourage the board to continue building transparency, strengthen the relationship with community and the newspaper, and just because it meets the law does not make it the right thing to do. Beloit must go well beyond what is legal to regain the trust and support of the community. And if you haven't seen tonight's newspaper article, please make sure you read that this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time. Is there anybody else open to making a public comment at this time? Any other email? All right. Thank you very much again for making the time this evening. And we will move on then to item number 4, our superintendent's report. So Dr. Kieser?
Thank you and good evening. We have 2 reports that we'll be talking about, and I know that in future board updates we'll be talking more about updates around summer school as well as plans that are in play for the fall. So for this evening, we'll start off with a school spotlight. We're taking opportunities each month to allow schools to shine a spotlight on all that they are doing. And tonight, I'm pleased to have Merrill community here to talk a little bit about all the work and the exciting things that are happening at Merrill Elementary. So I'll turn it over to the team.
Thank you. We appreciate this opportunity to share about Merrill Elementary School. My name is Brandy Herford. I am the principal at Merrill Elementary School. This is my 2nd year at Merrill Elementary School and my 20th year in the district. Merrill Elementary is a very small school, very community-based, and it is about 84% students of color, Black, Latinx, and then students of 2 races or more. Today, I brought my building leadership team with me to help present. We are following the SAIL process of shared accountability within a building. And so they are key leaders, and we are building our leadership team. And so I felt that it was important that they be here. So our SIP plan, we follow small goals as well. So we do 50-day or 100-day plans to try to make sure that we're getting to our final goal. Today, the BLT will discuss with you our 3 main goals: literacy, math, and our building choice, which is culturally responsive teaching. We chose culturally responsive teaching due to our demographics of our students, as well as us being flagged by ESSA for achievement of African American males. And so we really feel that culturally responsive teaching is a huge goal for us. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to my team.
Good evening. My name's Stephanie Ford. I'm the literacy instructional coach at Merrill Elementary, and I'm here to talk a little bit about literacy right now. So we've done a lot at Merrill as far as literacy this year. The first thing I was going to talk about is our Unpacking Standards. So we've been using our School District of Beloit template to unpack standards through a all-staff process. And then we used that and transferred it into smaller groups of grade level teams. Those teams met with instructional leadership. So myself or the assistant principal or principal were there to help guide the teachers through that process. And then those unpacking standards is to transfer into the grade level work and continuous planning that our teachers do on a regular basis. So we were able to practice that kind of as a whole staff together and then be able to practice it at the grade level and standard. The other thing that we did this year was video reflections. So we used Jim Knight's Big Four, and we again met together as a whole staff, walked through the process, discussed guiding questions that were in the 4 categories that Jim Knight outlines. And then we were able to actually meet in, again, grade level teams, and together we sat and watched videos of our teachers teaching. And then we were able to use those guiding questions to provide feedback and reflect deeply on the process. Another thing that we're doing in literacy at Merrill Elementary is we're going to be digging deep into foundational skills. And so our teachers are going to be participating in an intensive staff development on foundational skills actually tomorrow, so heads up. I have Miss Adama here. She's a classroom teacher, and she's going to be speaking a bit about APTT and our small group plan.
So one of the opportunities that we had with teaching in the pandemic and hybrid was that we had an opportunity to kind of shake things up across grade levels and really go with our beliefs that every child belongs to every teacher. During our literacy intervention, we were able to really, using the data that we had, focus every staff member's abilities and bring very small groups of students in to do interventions. That meant ELL staff, we had paras, we also had specialists, our gym teachers and our music teachers were able to come in and help our students with literacy during a shared accountability time. We've been really blessed to have leadership that's really about building staff capacity to really reach our students. To that end, we also have been doing APTT, which is our academic parent-teacher teams. This is our 6th year that we've been doing it, and it's all about shared accountability between our families and our staff. We truly believe that our families are our child's first teachers, and we value them. And APTT is a means of really empowering and engaging our families in the education of their children. And we've been doing a really great job at it for 6 years.
Miss Oscar's going to come up and talk about math.
Good evening, Carrie Oscar. I serve under Ms. Herford as assistant principal at Merrill. And one of my additional duties is we currently do not have a math coach, and so I love math, and so I stepped into that role and have really enjoyed it. And so when we look at our data, and Ms. Herford will share a little later, literacy is our greatest need. And math is a half step behind, but literacy is absolutely our greatest need. And so when our group met last summer, not knowing where we'd be, we decided we want to do a few things really well. And so you'll notice in math that in terms of things that we've worked on, we just mirrored the processes, right? So Ms. Herford worked with staff on literacy. I worked with staff on math in terms of unpacking standards. And one thing that I really hit with my groups and found was really interesting is not the idea that a student is either meeting or not meeting a standard, but where are they on that progression? So thinking about our vertical alignment, it's not that our students can't, it's that they can't yet. And then what are we doing in terms of building success criterion to figure out where are they at and where do they need to be? And can we even get to them to a spot where they're beyond what we need them to? So I mirrored that in terms of unpacking standards. Video reflections, much the same. I sat and worked with a group of kindergarten teachers, very great experience in terms of allowing staff to view other staff. We actually are going to continue on term 4, which is why you'll see it at the bottom. We had such a positive response. What a positive risk for a teacher to put themselves up on the smartboard, especially this year. A lot of the videos were not in-person videos. They were when we were in full distance learning. So very interesting then to gym nights work and work through that. So we had such a positive response that we're going to continue in term 4 to offer that. I think it's important to note too, they were heterogeneous groups. And so the PE teacher or the in-school support staff member is watching the video alongside the kindergarten teacher, So when we talk about community at Merrill and Merrill being a community school, I think that was really important to us. It wasn't just, a lot of times it's just classroom staff, but we really wanted to have everybody be a part of that. Small group instruction, very similar in terms of literacy, obviously, but a math focus. But one thing that we're grateful as we move towards term 4 is we now do have an interventionist. And so she is spending time now, obviously, digging into data and pulling small groups as well. But we spent a lot of time really thinking about how, Ms. Herford worked through, along with district support, to put a learning framework in place, meaning starting like with a mini lesson, offering then small group instructions. And we spent a lot of time really digging into not just offering students opportunities, but purposeful opportunities, so that not a single moment is lost. And as we also move into term 4, like I said, literacy is the priority. So term 4, we're working on number talks after shoring up some literacy things. And we are focusing on number talks. So if you have heard the phrase, the new math, not that number talks fits under that per se, but it is an idea, if you're familiar with Jill Bowler, and she's kind of a math guru in terms of growth mindset, right? We haven't been able to do it yet, but she also teaches and preaches flexible thinking and really expanding your thinking abilities as a student, and that's what we find at Merrill. Similar to reading, they're struggling in foundational math skills. So what that means is number sense, right? Just the basis. And so one thing that our team pinpointed last summer, and we're going to work on term 4, is the idea of a number talk, a 10-minute exercise simply devoted to expanding a student's number sense. So the way that they're able to flexibly work with numbers, visualize problem solving, as well as perform calculations quickly and accurately. So that's some of the great work we've been doing in math. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicole Davidson. I'm a second grade teacher, and I will be talking to you about culturally relevant practices, and then Marawa will come and talk a little bit more about how that looks at our building. So we really, knowing that our staff is pretty new, we really wanted to begin with 7 cultural experiences, just kind of get them grounded in our community, in our neighborhood, and with our students. So we did field trips to different places in our community, the New Life Center, the Merrill Community Center, is there any? The community garden, gosh, just to get our staff out and about in the community and get to know that community and to know our community that we love. And it's so near and dear to our hearts. Another thing that we've been doing is a Merrill Film Festival. It started with this film we found about African-American boys. Also, when thinking about our data and making sure that we own that and make sure that we are doing as much as we can to fix that. We found this film and it spiraled into a whole film festival. So we watched many different films to get our teachers more culturally aware and also helping them understand how sometimes our institutions and the way we do things can sometimes perpetuate some inequities in our system, in our schools, and in the community. So also, we believe culturally relevant practices is academic parent-teacher teams, is a culturally relevant practice. We believe that our families are amazing and are valued, and we want to always work together and make sure that that we're all on the same page. We heard someone say earlier that it takes a village to raise a child, and academic parent-teacher teams is how we expand our village. So let's see here. I'm going to talk about Read Your Heart Out and the Walls and Halls, kind of because they're kind of together. So I'll go with Read Your Heart Out first, which is something we've been doing for 5 or 6 years also. It is our African-American celebration where we bring in community members. Students get to have experiences in sometimes science, sometimes art, dance throughout the day. And it's a really empowering time for our students and for our community members. And so one thing that we do during Read Your Heart Out is the students decorate the halls. And so we were thinking, well, why isn't this happening every day? Why aren't we doing this all year? So the Walls and Halls project came out of that because we really wanted our students to see themselves throughout the building, throughout the walls and in the halls. Carrie Oscar actually found a fabulous artist that did some artwork. You can see it behind Miss Herford there in the picture. And we have like masks, we have many different pictures that really just reflect our students. And it's so nice, you can go and you can hear kids and they'll point and say, hey, that looks like me. So like, it's just so nice to be able to have our students' images reflected in our school. And the other thing that we were really excited about was our Ron Clark Academy PD, and it was amazing and awesome. And he talked a lot about how to engage African-American boys and how to just boost engagement in general. It was so fun and valuable. Like, I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm gonna have Madawa come and talk about ESL and how that looks for us.
Yeah, and my name is Stepani Marawa Stanley. I'm very proud of being part of the Merrill diverse community. If you haven't noticed, Merrill has got Black teachers beside the students. They have African American, they have white, they have Native American, and I believe one of their teachers is also from the islands of Fiji. So we're truly, truly diverse. So because I'm an ESL teacher, so I'm incorporating all the cultures. So in like what Nicole has told us about, we had, for the ESL, we pulled together all our resources and we actually work as a team. So like we have the Hispanic Heritage Month. So what we did with all the ESL teachers in the district, we compiled the virtual library, and we actually did the same thing for the virtual Black History Month library so that the teachers can actually incorporate all those stories about music, as she said, music, food, clothing, and everything that you can tap into. And I'm so proud to know that the teachers actually use these. And it's very important because as you know, our mission is for our Black boys mainly, but it also encompasses all the diverse culture. So the children can actually see themselves when they hear the stories being read. And that was truly important because it inspired them to know that they are important in education. Thank you. All right, so to talk a little bit more about growth mindset, as Ms. Oscar had mentioned before, we might not be there yet, but we have some good points that are headed in our direction. So to talk a little bit, I think we'll start with our attendance data. We started the beginning of the school year in distance learning at the end of October with 42.7% of our families engaging in distance learning. As of January, we had 73.8% of our families engaging in 75 to 100% of the time. So we celebrate that because that was a big transformation for our families to go completely virtual when we also had struggles with internet access or just getting families to understand. Our third grade had the highest attendance rate at 79.49%. So we celebrate our third grade teachers for that. Our Latinx Latino population, 71.92%, and our Black and African American population, 63.39%. So we are excited that we grew in our attendance, and we will continue to work on that as we now have to work on students engaging on the days that they're not in person. So we have, like, as we look at our attendance records, we have those students that are coming. They're coming Monday and Tuesday, but then engaging on Thursday and Friday when they're not in front of an instructor. So we're working on moving on to that piece as well. So as far as our literacy assessments go, in first through third grade, we saw more than 20% of our students grow in foundational skills based off of our standards-based report card. We currently have completed our PALS literacy screener for the first time. We did see some scores that we feel are strong in foundational skills, and we look forward to more growth in May as we look at that. We have some specific targeted things that we've been working on, and so we're really waiting for that growth to come in May. Teachers will be doing that as well. In math, Grade 2, we really want to give them a shout out there. 70% of the students were proficient in our number sense screener that we used in the beginning of the year. So we are working on building that number sense, and we hope to continue that with number talks and those conversations, because we know students of color tend to engage more in a conversation type of thing than just, just a worksheet or something else. So we're really focusing on that engagement. Also, third grade in the area of number and operations and the standards on the report card. In the first quarter, 25% of our kids were proficient, and by third quarter was 60.9%. So we are seeing a growth in that area as well. As far as our school report card goes, Merrill had a dip for several years. So 2016-17 and the 2017-2018 year, Merrill was a one-star school. In the year of 2018 and 2019, the first year that I arrived, Merrill had went into a two-star school. So they went to meeting few expectations. And so we, with our growth mindset as a staff and all the things that we feel like we're putting in place, we feel like we're headed in the right direction to work on our school report card. All right, next, please.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Hansen, special education teacher at Merrill. So we are very lucky for all of our family collaboration, and besides that, we also have many community partnerships that we are very lucky and happy to have. Frito-Lay is a company that has been donating chips for our students and our staff. We have Alverno College. They have provided at a very discounted rate classes and training for a staff member to help students with character education. UW Whitewater students come into our virtual classrooms on a very regular basis, daily, to help assist with small group reading and math instruction. Beloit Citywide Softball has donated money for our walls that we're very proud of. The National Honor Society offers a tutoring program for our third grade students. And Merrill Food Pantry, it's an on-site food distribution for our families that we're very proud of. The Beloit College Mortar Board, it is a virtual reading with and to our students, a program that just started up this week that the students and classroom teachers are excited to have. With shoesthatfit.org, it's a program that Amazon had to donate, 50 pairs of shoes to our students who needed quality footwear. And also Fairbanks, our partnership with them, they had donated the funds for every student in the school to have a Merrill polo shirt. So those are just some of the community partnerships that we have had this year, and it was virtual, so we're excited that we were able to have so much support during this year. Our PTO, even though our school was virtual, we still did, it was important for us to continue very strong relationships with families. And in fact, I feel, or many of us feel, that our relationships with families have continued to grow astronomically throughout the year. We started the year with we actually called it a honk and wave, because we wanted all of the students to be able to set eyes on their classroom teachers. We thought that was really important for the relationship building. So the students, they came through, just stayed in their vehicles. All of the classroom teachers were lined up. They got in raffles and won some prizes for coming. That's also when they got all their materials, so we kind of did it all in one swoop. That was really fun. Then in February, we did a Heroes event, and that was probably my favorite of the year. So students submitted their heroes in a variety of ways. Some dressed up as their favorite hero and submitted pictures. We had some poems or sentences that students wrote about their favorite heroes. There were books shared about students' favorite heroes. And then during the live meet, we had some guardians and students actually share live about their hero. It was really cute to see. It was a great bonding experience, and the teachers also joined in and shared as well. The last one we had was a virtual movie night. That was fun. We mailed popcorn to every single family in the entire building, along with invites to our movie night. We had fantastic participation. We do have an potential upcoming talent show, so it would be great to see some of you guys, some of you come and participate. So more to come on that.
So moving on to Merrill, reflecting on our next steps, we plan on looking at the opportunities for looping some of our students and staff together. We plan to continue our culturally responsive practices journey and work on creating some type of adult framework as we move forward, and also to further our PD in terms of student engagement, especially for those populations that we are struggling to reach. So we appreciate this opportunity. We are happy to have filled some vacancies in our area of our reading specialist and our academic interventionist. And we appreciate the community support to make our walls and halls look like our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Herford. It is great to hear the stories and all that's been there. I've enjoyed coming out. I remember walking with your staff to the community gardens, and I look forward to coming back out this Thursday for some cardio drumming, I hear. So
Yes, I'm very
right.
excited. Thank you, Hackett, for the challenge.
And I believe there's
go ahead.
some questions that are.
Yes, thank you. So I'll hold my comments and questions, but like full disclosure, I need to know when that talent show is. But go ahead, Board Member Levy.
So I don't have a question, but I would just like to say, Principal Herford, it is evident that you put your heart into this work, and thank you so much for leading this amazing team. I love every child belonging to every teacher. I love that you're doing APTT. I love the Hometown Heroes display. And one thing that wasn't mentioned, but I can attest to through firsthand knowledge, that pre-COVID, Merrill always had volunteers, from greeters in the morning to helping out in the lunchroom to volunteering in classrooms. And that speaks to the family atmosphere and the excellent work that is happening within that building. So all of you should definitely be proud. And I definitely appreciate the consistent work that you're doing at Merrill.
Thank you. We appreciate it. We have a great team.
Thank you very much, Board Member Levy. Board Member Anderson?
Well, Amy pretty much took all the words that I wanted to say, but I want to say I'm really kind of proud to see everything that you guys are doing. It's pretty cool to see. Also, I do want to know when this talent show is. I probably won't take part if that option came up. I don't have any kind of talents to brag about, so but I would love to come see the kids take part in the talent show.
Thank you. We'll make sure we send out those invites.
Thank you very much, Board Member Anderson. Board Member Levy?
Well, I just want to thank this staff and this principal for the work that you are doing. It's a difficult task, but I can see the love that you have for the kids, and also the student achievement and the test results. Testing is not all that happens, but we are educating young people that will stand and have to do things in public and be valuable contributing members to our society. So when you stand before us and you present the positive work that you have done today, you let people know that Beloit is a very special place with very special adults who work and care for our children. And you show the possibilities of what our children can do when we have committed staff members in front of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Board Member Levy. Board Member Delgado?
I just want to echo what my other board members said. What an amazing job, and how wonderful is to see how inclusive you are with, with all of your families. It is just wonderful to see, that having that positive environment, and just, having a great leader, because it takes a great leader to lead your staff, to think positive and to move forward with, positivity, and being so inclusive. It's just really awesome to see that. So thank you for that, and congratulations to all for doing that for the students.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Delgado. Board Member Wong?
Congratulations, Principal Herford, on your job and your leadership. Also to the staff that's here to present. Great job and what you've done in the past, and great luck. Good luck going forward in the future. Your jobs are challenging. We all know that, but you definitely have your hearts in the right spot. So it's good to see that. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate their shared leadership of the building.
Thank you very much, Board Member Wong. If there are no other comments, I just wanted to say that I know my ET heart light is glowing right now for my Merrill Tigers, and I just want to thank you all so much for just the love that's been shown. I want to just echo everything that my colleagues shared. I also just want to point out, I love the support for staff, because, I think that's, we all have to be partners in success here. And it really shows the caring building culture that you've put together. And so I just wanted to appreciate you for that, as well as just the growth mindset piece is just so critical. And thank you so much for taking the time to share your love and your dedication with us this evening. It was really inspiring.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Kieser.
Thank you. Thank you very much again for coming tonight and sharing a bit about all the work that you're doing. So, all right, moving on to our next report. We, as the board is very familiar with, we have contracted with Shirk Consulting, and so we have, again, Tracy tonight to talk about our latest climate and culture report, and I will just turn it over to Ms. Shirk.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kieser. And are you going to share our presentation?
Yes, there we go.
Perfect, awesome. So I'm going to go through these first few slides pretty quickly because we've gone over them previously, but I just want to do a reminder on that. So we will go through our survey results today, comparison to the previous surveys, and then some comparison based on demographics. So this is our fourth survey. Some of the key things that I want to kind of share with us before we get into the definition is that this is the first survey that we've done with a permanent superintendent. So we've had a number of interims in the past, so I just want to preface that. And then also named that when this survey was conducted, which was March 15th through the 27th, we were still in a remote environment. And I think that those two key concepts are something that we'll notice throughout the survey. So if we want to go on to the next, we're going to talk about some of the definitions. And the first one is that there's some key drivers to success for staff retention: organizational policies and practices, teacher preparation and support, and school leadership are some of those key items that we see. For the district, we focused on a couple key areas of focus, so we can jump to that next slide. And what we've been focusing on is employee engagement and our staff engagement. We've also been focusing on what is specifically the climate, which is the teacher preparation and support, the culture, which we've looked at as school leadership, and then faith in the process. And we've dug in pretty deep to these over the last couple of survey reports. So if you just want to jump to slide number 11, where we'll just start to go through the results and insights. And with these results and insights, one of the things that I want to name is we did have a lower number of survey responses this time. If we jump to the, thank you. Go back one slide. We'll just play the slide dance here. So with that, we did have a lower number of responses. So this time we had 486 responses, whereas in the previous survey we had 555. So this was a 52% response rate. When we dug into, why did we have an 11% decrease in that? One of the things that we saw is that it looked like that there was 3 surveys that were out at that same time when this survey went out. The other thing that we saw in the comments is I think that there's just a lot of things happening with knowing that we were switching to in-person with COVID. So I just wanted to name that because that does have an impact on some of the numbers that we see. So if we go to the next slide, this is a breakdown of the specific survey completion based on school. There were 2 schools that did have an increase, but for the most part, there was definitely a decrease in survey participation. So I'll talk about that as we kind of go through the report, because there are some things going, okay, if we had an 11% decrease, what does this specifically mean for these specific numbers? So if we go to the good to great slide, what we're really talking about here is the survey results are done on a Likert scale. So this is on a scale of 1 to 5. And when we look at the rating of a 3, we're essentially stating that the rating of a 3 is good. And then we're going to great, which is a 5. And what's important with that is knowing that there's a continuum. So we're not always going to see 5s or 4s, et cetera, but there is some change. And we also know that as changes are made within leadership, as changes are made with accountability, some of those numbers start to change. And I'll speak to that in just a second. But one of the good things that we are seeing is that, you can jump to the next slide, is that there was only one rating that was below a 3 this time. And that rating that was below a 3 this time was specifically related to parent involvement in the school. And in the last conversation that we just heard from the Merrill staff, we heard about that parent engagement and parent involvement. And we definitely see that there's a distinction between engagement and involvement. But when we look at that parent involvement, one of those key concerns that we did start to see was specifically, if we don't have those parents involved in the school and engaged with their students, there's impact on the learning and impact on that teaching. The next one that we specifically saw within this is specifically looking at professional development as an opportunity. And when we look at that opportunity for professional development, we'll notice that this has been one that has been on previous surveys. The specific comments around professional development that have been brought forward is the amount of time spent on it, and is it appropriate based on what the individual is either teaching or supporting. And then based on the type of staff member that they are in comparison to those that they're serving. And we'll dig into that a little bit more. The third one that we see is one that did increase, and this is one that came up to a 3, and that is that it is easy to serve the students in the district. And when we specifically look at, why is it easy to serve the students in this district, and that bringing that up, one of the things that was really noticed there is the perception that now we have a permanent superintendent and we're going to have consistency going forward. So that was something that really came out. And then that last one is the transparent communication from district administration to staff. I will note that this is the only one that showed up here that did not show up on the last survey. But this did show up on the very first survey that we did in the winter of 2020. And I'm going to dig into that in a minute, but I just wanted to go through those opportunities and really highlight, we only had one below a 3. So as we talk about good to great, that is something to celebrate. Our strengths that we're seeing are school safety. An immediate supervisor treats me fairly. One of the things to note with those strengths is that these have been consistent throughout our surveys. And again, we like to focus just on 4 areas of opportunity and celebrating our strengths so that we can create those action plans around that. One of the things that we have done the last survey and this survey with Dr. Kieser and the administrative team is really starting to share this information in some more depth with district leaders and school leaders so that these can be addressed and implemented in the specific schools. So if we go to the next slide, what this slide shows is really what is the change over time for those 4 areas of focus. And I just want to orientate you a bit with this slide. As you see the numbers go up, they get bluer, right? And as we see a number go down, they go yellow or red. And one of the things that we did note with this specific survey is that more than 50% of the survey responses did actually decrease this survey, whereas in the past surveys, they've almost all gone up. However, they did not drop below what our baseline was back in the winter of 2020. So that's definitely a positive. So when we specifically look at this slide, again, we're looking and saying, all right, these are the specific areas of the 4 key opportunity areas. And with that, the one thing I do want to point out is something that's not on the slide. And the one area that dropped off this survey that was on the previous 3 surveys is dealing with, are students appropriately, do they have the appropriate consequences when there's situations that come up, whether it's behavior or otherwise. And I bring that up because as students have been in a distance learning environment versus an in-person learning environment, some of those behavioral issues have not shown up. And we did talk about this the last survey as well. So I'm bringing it up again because now that students are back in the classroom, that was a fear that we definitely heard through the open responses. So I did just want to bring that up here because, it's not on the page, but I just want to make sure that that's still, as we're back in the classroom, something that we're paying attention to from the data points. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide, where we start to look at the specific distinctions by position. And when we look at those key distinctions by position, there's a couple things that we're specifically noticing. When we take a look at parent involvement in schools, we're seeing that for administration, they're believing, hey, this is a 3.3 versus as a teacher, we're specifically seeing this as a 2.7. So when we look at those key points, one of the things that we're specifically noting there is as those specific things change, why are we seeing a distinction between that perception from administrators and the perception from staff? And I'm going to bring this up here, but we're also going to see it throughout the others as a trend, and that really comes into some of the communication that we're seeing. And so when we talk about the communication, one of those key things that really came up with communication, and again, this is one of those 4 areas that we also see on the slide, is that transparent communication from district administration to staff has been very high level. And staff are essentially stating, we're so grateful we have a permanent superintendent. Now let's really start to dig into the details and let's figure out and start tackling the hard issues versus the very high level issues is one of the key things that we heard. Another key item that we heard was it's great that there's great communication going to building leaders. However, building leaders are not always disseminating that information in the same way to their staff. So there's a discrepancy between some staff in one building are hearing things differently than they're hearing it in another building. And it's creating some concerns and a perception of inequities or disparities. And so, again, that communication becomes key. So I just want to point that out because we're seeing that kind of distinction between being at a higher rating for administration than for teaching or our support staff. The other thing that I wanted to point out specifically on this slide is when we look at the professional development, and I feel like we've talked a lot about this over the last 3 surveys. And with the professional development, it's definitely a concern about how time's being spent on those Wednesdays to really serve students is really one of those key things that came out within that. The other key thing that came out with professional development is what is appropriate for, let's say, a specials teacher versus a classroom teacher, and ensuring that they're getting that appropriate intervention for really what they need, but then that is mapped to the student achievement scores as well, so that we're supporting teachers where they're at and what they're doing, but that's correlated to those scores. And we've talked in the past about how we're implementing that within the school improvement programs. So if we go to the next slide, this slide is really looking at, the distinctions between length of stay. And when we look at the length of stay of our staff, comparatively, we do definitely see some distinctions. So one of the things that did not change in this survey is that our first-year teachers have higher ratings than teachers that have been with us for a while, okay? So that's one thing that we want to point out, and some of that is how do we start to engage those teachers that have and those staff that have a longer length of stay within the organization. The next thing that I did want to point out specifically within this is when we look at that transparent communication from district administration, it's pretty consistent all the way across the board. We don't see a lot of changes within that we saw within some of those other numbers. So then the next, if you want to jump to the next slide, one of the key questions that we've asked every time, and this has been a forced yes, no response, and the reason for that is we were really curious about, how do you currently feel respected in your role? And one of the things that was interesting in this survey, and this is the first time where we've seen all of these decrease. The last survey, the only one that had decreased was Community of Beloit, whereas in this survey, we're seeing every area decrease by a minimum of 3%. And when we really dug into those open comments and open responses to understand why we saw this decrease in feeling respected in their role, a couple things came up. And we've talked about many of these. One of them is really that communication, really understanding what's happening and why those things are happening. Another one that really came up specifically with, building administration and district administration is that feeling of we're not being listened to, specifically around returning to in-person teaching, and are we doing the best for our students. So those were some of the key items. Some other themes that came up was specifically talking about feeling isolated based on COVID. So those are our key themes there. Then if we want to jump to the Great Place to Work slide, in this slide, one of the things that we've looked at in every survey is what is that key correlation between the school district of Beloit as a great place to work and the reasons why. And none of these have changed, which is a good thing because it specifically tells us where we need to focus. And that is, hey, do I feel like the district values their staff? And, many of the things that drive that are the communication. I can trust district administration, therefore, what they say, we're going to follow through on that with some key action items. One of the things that really came up in this survey more so than the others with I Can Trust District Administration is looking at that cohesion between the district administration team at COLAC, that there's consistent messaging going out so that there's not messaging that's one directive from one group and another directive from another. So, hey, can we trust that team as a whole that we're going to have the consistent conversation? And then concerns are addressed effectively.
Again, this goes back to the communication, and it came through with, hey, digging a bit deeper into the weeds than the high level now that we have that permanent superintendent. And then that the best teachers and staff are retained. So those are the correlation to, we believe that this is a great place to work. And so with that, what questions do you have?
At this time, are there board member questions? Feel free to use the chat. It looks like there are no questions at this time. You gave a very thorough presentation.
I do
so
have a
appreciate it.
question. I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding. You go right ahead, Vice President Levy.
Trying to navigate these things here. I do have one question. So, well, several, but in the area where you showed the slide with the respect level or what they thought about each, that group. So with the board, did you have any information regarding to that about the change, or was it in the open comments?
Yeah, so what was specifically stated about the school board in the open comments was essentially how the school board is supporting each other in having kind of that united front, is that there's clear, concise communication amongst board members, that there's not infighting with board members. That was one of the key messages within that specific area. And can we trust the board, to follow through on those key items that they say they're going to do and stay at that high level versus digging into the weeds and allowing administration to handle those key areas.
Okay. And then I know this was asked a couple surveys ago about the disaggregation of the information on the employees. And I think at one point in time, I'm kind of remembering some board meetings, it said like that this survey, as it was requested, did not go into those areas to examine those demographics of the staff members that were reporting, like by race.
Correct.
The same way you did perceptions. And then I saw in board docs, in some of the preview documents about the renewal for the contract, is consideration of including that information in the new request?
So it's a great question, Vice President Levy. As part of the contract renewal, we would be able to renegotiate exactly how we want to break out that data. So absolutely, all of those pieces are up and available, and there's been initial conversations with Board President Miller and Tracy in terms of what the initial requests from the board have been, and that I know has been included in that list of requests.
Great questions. Are there any other questions?
One more. So when I'm looking at this slide that is currently up 19 through 23, and the winter, spring, fall, that winter goes back to what winter?
Yeah, so the original survey date, it was conducted, I think it was January 2020, and it was meant to be actually in the fall semester. There was a number of extenuating circumstances that pushed that. And then that was spring 2020, fall of 2020, then this last one was spring of 2021.
Right. So was there any information, or just, I see two areas where there's growth, the school board and the district administration. So collectively, when you look over that winter, spring, fall, as 54 to 69 to 79, and even with district administration, I heard you mention the theme of a consistent and permanent superintendent kind of in that district administration spot. Any summary on the board and those numbers increasing during that?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great question. So specifically related to those numbers increasing with that is that with some of the changes of board members out and in, that increase some of that specific trust. So there again, the concern of, can I trust the board to do what's in the best interest of students in this district, and can I trust the board to do what's in the best interest and allow administration to really be able to support the district is something that's come up several times. And as some of those items have changed, that did have a specific impact, and a lot of those were shared within that open response area to support those numbers.
Okay. And lastly, also, as you mentioned, like this change from fall to spring, that, you know, there's a percent change in all of them, that one, you didn't have as many people respond, and also that, you know, there's a negative dip. In that space, just could you kind of characterize like the responses maybe that you saw in the open comments about COVID? I mean, like, we all realize that we are living through something and people would like things to be one way, but kind of based off, you know, the reality of where we're living. What did you see in those comments specifically that kind of speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the key items that were specifically in the open comments, specifically relating to COVID, is, you know, I'm just looking for the percentage that I had here. There was a 47% higher staff response rate in open comments relating to the superintendent to listen to staff and be transparent with communication, specifically relating to the opening up of schools and ensuring that students were coming back to schools, and are those decisions being made that's in the best interest of students. So that was one key item relating to COVID. Another key item relating to COVID, and I mentioned it, I don't remember where earlier, but relating to the isolation and feeling like, hey, you know, how can I support both my fellow teachers and support specifically my students in this kind of period of isolation? One of the other things that specifically came up relating to COVID and many of the open response questions was, I'm not seeing the faces of my students, and because we're not requiring cameras to be on, therefore it's kind of like hearing somebody talk, then all of a sudden you see them in person and in 3D, and it gives you a completely different perspective and a different way that you can support that student. So those were some of those key things that came up, and those were, I would say, the three themes specifically relating to COVID.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions at this time? Thank you very much, Vice President Levy. Were there any other questions or comments at this time from other board members? Hearing none, I'd like to thank you very much for all the work that you've done, and we'll look forward to future communications. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for providing that. And I want to just say that as I've come into this district and seen this is very encouraging. And one of the things as we start rolling this out to our building leaders, we talk about our continuous improvement process. And as part of that continuous improvement process is having a pulse on our organizational health. And so this survey provides, and this is the forethought that the board had in engaging in doing this survey. It provides us an organizational health pulse check. And so having this is very helpful. And it's also important to note for the community that we don't get to see the raw data. Everything that the board, that the administration gets to hear is exactly what was presented. And so the information is completely self-contained, including all of the response rates go directly off-site. And so it is truly a good way to help us know where we're doing well and then where are our opportunities for growth. And as it was presented, there are always opportunities for growth, but it's on that continuum of we want to get to a standing of good across the board, so that we can then start to grow from good to great. So we look forward to this continued process and look forward to more reports. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Dr. Kieser. At this time, speaking of reports, that takes us to agenda item area 5, which is reports. And I'd like to invite our esteemed student board member, Mr. Kana Wong, to give his report, please.
Good evening. This month's student survey has had the lowest participation out of the 6 surveys I've conducted this year. It wasn't by a huge amount, but I think it's something that's worth bringing up. There were about 380 students who replied. And then lastly, this is the first report since we've been back in the building. I decided to theme this month's report a little bit around that, as well as student morale. My survey showed that about 75% of the students are back to in-person school. 90% of those students say that they're learning noticeably more in person than they were online. I don't think this would come as a surprise to anyone, but I do think it's something that needs to be said. There are a couple more figures. Over 75% of the in-person students have at least one class with 4 or less kids. I don't have a class with 4 kids all day. Slightly less than 50% of the in-person kids have at least one class with 8 or more kids. I don't think this is very relevant, but I thought it was very interesting. The information that I thought would be most concerning would be the student morale and pride. Over 50% of the students who responded view the overall student morale as low or very low. Less than 10% of our students place their marker above a 3 on a 1 to 5 scale. I don't think this should come as a surprise to anyone, but I think that it is something that should be talked about and can become a huge problem. That question came back a lot more positively than I thought it would. My other morale-related question was, are you proud to be a Purple Knight? To be completely honest, I was shocked to see that 70% of students answered with some form of yes. I try not to give my own opinion too much while giving my board reports, but I believe that the non-response bias here sways the overall student opinion quite a bit. From what I've seen and heard through sports, clubs, posts online, word of mouth, and so on, I'm under the impression that a lot of our students are checked out of school. By this, I mean to say that students care less than ever about their school activities, classes, and classmates. Again, this is just what I have seen and how I've perceived the student body to be. I normally wouldn't put my opinion out without data to back it up, but I think that it's something that's too important not to bring up. Lastly, I asked students for their concerns and positive feedbacks in hopes of receiving both. I did this in short response questions on the Google form. I read through all 380 plus of the responses for each of the questions. There were 3 main themes that came in the student concern box. The first concern was for online students not learning as much as the students who are in person. The second one is a grievance that a lot of kids are having regarding lunch. Lunch at 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. is too early and too late for many kids. The first group of kids is eating a second breakfast. I think a lot of those kids would appreciate a change. The last and largest comment in this section, by a large shot, was a plea for a full week of school, 4 or 5 days. I'm not sure if this would be possible for our district or not, but it's not often you have kids begging for more school. Students are excited and eager to learn and would participate if they're given the chance. Finally, I'll end with some positives. The large majority of positive comments were directed at the teachers. The effort and care that many of our teachers are putting in has not gone unnoticed by the students. Because this has been longer than my normal reports, I won't read out all of the teachers mentioned, but know that there were a lot and that students weren't afraid to demand pay raises and name their teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a very thorough and very valuable report. We appreciate it. Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you so much. At this time, it looks like we have a posted report for Planning and Budget Committee. I appreciate it. Chair Wong, did you have any comments to make on that, or are you good with the posted report?
No, I'm good.
Thank you so much for that. Oversight and Finance, Chair Levy, did you have comments that you wanted to share?
I do, with the disclaimer that my device is about to die. So Secretary Shope, if you could read my desperate email to let me in on my other device. If the device does die, you know what happened. Yes, so I have submitted these, so they will be posted. But just to give you an overview, for the Oversight and Finance Committee met. At our last meeting, we reviewed the Athletic Code 19 update, the Toro Lawnmower RFP, the financial reports for February, the 2020-2021 Additional Fund 60 Student Activity Group approval, which is the French Club at Beloit Memorial, and then also the Fall 2021 Early College Credit Program / Start College Now applications, the maps for K-8 for the DLI programming, and also the automotive alignment for systems at Beloit Memorial. And then I also included an update because we did have that special meeting. So the Oversight and Finance Committee held a special meeting on Tuesday, April 20th, 2021, in order to rescind the motion to move approval to allow spectators and attend outdoor events, and also providing an opportunity for intermediate school students to participate in athletic after-school camps. The motion was rescinded and reissued with the adjusted date of April 20th for action to the full board, and the full board was convened immediately after the special Oversight and Finance Committee meeting to take action. This is necessary because the administration did not post the meeting to be addressed on April 13th. For the legislative report, I followed the same format as I usually do, so I will allow those who are interested to go ahead and read that once it's posted. I will just note one thing: if the item, so if it's assembly or a Senate item that has been in committee longer than a month, that's what the asterisk is for. And the note is there, but just in case anyone missed it. That's all.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Policy and Personnel, Chair Jacobs, did you have any comments that you wanted to share?
Point of order?
Yes.
Ms. Jacobs texted me and said that she did need to leave the meeting.
All right, thank you very much. We'll get something posted up there at the earliest convenience then. And thank you very much again for the legislative update, which brings us then to item 6, our action items. We have one for this evening, which is our committee structure. Dr. Kieser, did you want to start us off on that?
Yes, thank you, Board President Miller. So at Governance Committee, we had talked in part about a committee structure moving forward with a new board coming on board this evening. And so we had a lively discussion, and the committee wanted to forward the conversation to the full board to get feedback. We left it posted for discussion and action so that we would have maximum flexibility, but the intent was to gather full board feedback. The committee structure as it currently stands is Budget and Planning, Oversight and Finance, and Policy and Personnel, intermixed with regular and business board meetings. And really this structure came about through a meeting at a conference and where this structure was talked about. And the thought was to place the structure of the committees in accordance to budget cycles, where the intent was that the Budget and Planning Committee would then become the Oversight and Finance Committee as budgets are adopted, and committees would follow that entire life cycle. The bullet points are not a complete delineation that's in policy, but it highlights a summary. And as you can see, there are bullet points in both Oversight and Budget and Planning that overlap one another. This creates some confusion in terms of when we post items to committee, because there is a desire by the board to do the work in the committee and to provide efficiency at the regular board meetings. In addition, it also creates some anomalies in terms of Budget and Planning is always reviewing proposals, adoptions, and discontinuance of programs and curriculum materials, which does fall kind of different when you're talking about things even in the current year versus future years. Policy and Personnel, again, is pretty straightforward in terms of it has both of those items. The structure that we talked about in a proposed change would be to go back and resurrect a committee structure that really focuses on the intent of the work. And so, again, using the idea of department structure here, we have a Teaching, Learning, and Equity Department and Pupil Services Department. Those two really focus in on the instructional side of a district. And so that committee would oversee all of the work that comes out of those two departments. So that would include all of the curriculum, curricular resources, student achievement, special education, pupil services, code of conduct, title grants, achievement gap reduction grants, and so forth, clubs and activities. And they all have their own aligned budgets to them. So this committee could do all of the work of this department self-contained and forward that work onto the full board when needed. The other departments, budget, operation, and finance, would then handle basically the non-instructional side. So finances, budgets, facility planning, 10-year planning, properties, contracts, as well as any conversations around salary and benefits. This would then allow very clear delineation when we're bringing agenda items to committee, which committee they should be focused in on. Board members would have an opportunity, if they want to focus in on a particular committee, they could know exactly what they're going to be focusing the work on. The additional piece for policy and personnel would be that policy and personnel would be split and create a meeting of the full board at 6:30 or 30 minutes before a regular board meeting, and they would handle all of the employment recommendations. So creating that structure where the full board has a conversation on all employee recommendations just prior to the regular board meeting allows for that to be a discussion and does not need to be put forward onto the full board agenda, because the full board would actually already take action on that. This leaves the ability for the policy committee to then float in and amongst outside of a regular board meeting, creating, and this was a conversation that was earlier in the evening, that there would be a space between policy committee work and a regular board meeting intentionally for the opportunity for the board and community to react to any conversations that are happening at the committee level specifically to policy. There would be no recommended changes to the governance committee. So how would this possibly look? So the structure that we talked about and proposed was doing a week on and a week off. Originally, when we were talking in governance, I had just arbitrarily did it in weeks 2 and 4, but when I actually laid it against the proposed calendar for next year, which will be coming out next week, it actually makes more sense to do weeks 1 and weeks 3, because what it does is it allows for the board, not only a week between board meetings, so there would be a week on and week off for board members to read and become familiar with the information. It also provides an opportunity for in the months of November, December, and April to avoid a lot of the holidays and conclude the board's business before a new board is seated at the annual board meeting. So if we were to adopt a schedule like this, committee meetings would start at 5 and go to 6:30. The employment recommendations would be heard by the full board from 6:30 to 7, and then the regular board meeting would begin at 7 o'clock. Notice that I put policy off center from those Tuesdays, so that intentionally creates the space that was a question brought up earlier, where policy work could be done and the full board would have an opportunity to review the policy committee work, which I know was something that has been raised and was raised again this evening. If we take a look at the possible board meeting dates, you can see where those dates align. And there is actually in November the opportunity to do, because there are 5 weeks in November, the way it lines up, that we could get 2 board meetings. We would just shift the December ones up, which is typically what we've done in the past. And then finally, this was a discussion that Board President Miller had talked about in terms of committee structure makeup and resurrecting the idea of our committee membership for those two main committees to be increased by the inclusion of either staff and or community members. Some of the points that were talked about and ones that district council has been made aware of are, by doing this, things to be cognizant of is that board membership is still in the majority of any voting population that is created. By including staff and community members, we have the opportunity to increase staff and community membership in the educational process. It would include and seek out more community and staff feedback. And it also creates a pipeline for people to try out public service and participate in civic engagement with the future goals of potentially cultivating future board candidates or other candidates for public positions. So that's my summary. Now, Board President Miller, clarifications? Or?
Sure. Yeah, no, I just have a couple of comments. First, I wanted to, I want to thank the whole governance committee. I think a lot of really great work and thoughtfulness went into this. A couple quick points. I was just recently at an event where I believe the president of the NAACP, for example, mentioned that they try to build their meeting times around times when public governance is not taking place. So I just want to thank Dr. Kieser for his mindful proposal of alternating weeks, because I do believe that makes things more accommodating and easier to plan for our community and its participation, as well as keeps things predictable for our board. So I wanted to thank you for that. A quick note about the CISA 2 rep issue I mentioned earlier. I wanted to put a pin in that and come back, and now we're back. So CISA 2 board of controls meets on the third Tuesday of the month, and so as I'm currently serving year 2 of a 3-year election to that board of directors, with the board's permission, if we do adopt this model, I would like permission from the board to step down, and that would mean that I would still be the CISA 2 rep, I would attend the delegate meeting in June, and then they would elect somebody else from our region to serve on that board. So I just want to make folks aware of that. If we go to this model, that means that Beloit, unless CISA 2 Board of Controls makes a change to their schedule, would not be able to participate on the Board of Controls, but we could still send a rep to their annual delegate meeting where they're able to hear a presentation and then vote on representation. It's not a huge deal, but I wanted to be transparent and bring that up in case that's an issue for anybody. I have no qualms, although I have very much enjoyed serving on the Board of Controls. I have no qualms about stepping down because I do believe that Dr. Kieser's proposal is for the good of our district. So those are just kind of my notes. At this time, I'd like to open this up for questions, comments, thoughts, and reactions from our board.
So one question I have is, if we move to this structure, will we do another reassignment of committees?
That's an excellent question. So I put a little thought into that, and I'm going to defer to the whole board for this. What I thought would be logical was for Oversight and Finance to oversee the teaching, learning, and equity, if that would be a seamless transition, and then for Planning and Budget to oversee I'm spacing on the name, which is the finance? Business and Finance. However, if that doesn't feel like it's in alignment, we would certainly it would be no problem to bring this back up and reconsider appointments.
I would just want to know, we just went through the process, so if we're going to change, where are we all going? I would just like to know that before we actually went somewhere.
Sure. No, well, we could, yeah. And I mean, so that would be my initial thoughts. This wouldn't go into effect until I think we were talking about piloting it in the summer. So at that point, we could do a reorganizational discussion. That's a good question, though. I'm going to ask committee chairs right now what your thoughts and feelings are, if you'd be willing in your current roles to maintain your chairs over those committees. So, for example, Policy and Personnel, Chair Amy Levy would then sit over the policy committee in this proposed change. Chair Sean Levy, you would sit over teaching, learning, equity in this proposed change, just to pilot it. And then Chair Wong, you would sit over the budget and finance, business and finance piece. Would all three of you be willing to pilot to maintain those chair positions, pilot it, and then if we decide we're good, and otherwise we can have a reorganizational meeting after perhaps that pilot period. What are your thoughts?
I'm fine with that adjustment, and perfectly okay with the assignment of going to planning and budget, going to business and finance.
And I would just add in terms of Board Member Levy at the committee made this suggestion of testing it out, and so the time frame would be with feedback getting through this year and then starting it in the month of July and testing out like the month of July and August, and then reevaluate at that point.
Oh, I guess one of the things that, is just me and my learning style, because I've heard you say it a couple times, but I'm still missing it because I'm catching it all at once. Which committees are going where? The existing committees and the membership, as they were composed tonight, are going where?
That's a great clarification. So let me just pull up so I don't misstate the titles. So Oversight and Finance, which is the one that you're currently appointed to chair, would be Teaching, Learning, and Equity and People Services Committee in our current rough draft version of this. The one that Chair Amy Levy would be switching then just to separate out policy from personnel, so she would still oversee Policy Committee. And Chair Wong would oversee Business Operations and Finance Committee during our pilot beginning in July. However, this is open to discussion, obviously. What are your thoughts?
Explain the personnel part again.
Absolutely. Every board business meeting, we approve employment recommendations. So you'll see in consent agenda tonight, there's employment recommendations, exhibits A and B. Those have typically passed through Policy and Personnel Committee. What we've noticed is we don't want bureaucracy to stop up district progress, and so that is one of the reasons policy is it's in-depth work. It requires a lot of time and focus and revision. So grouping those two together can sometimes be problematic. Like we got to say, oh, well, we got to get to the employee rec, so we got to skip through these policies, and they become sort of backlogged. So when we discussed it at governance, it seemed wiser to separate those out, put personnel right before the board meetings, because if there is discussion, it's a singular topic. So it's the sole purpose of that committee would just be to approve employee recommendations. If there were a concern, there's the option to go into closed session under the statute that allows us to talk about specific personnel. So it's less likely to be a bureaucratic barrier to progress.
So who is the chair of the Personnel Committee? And what is the composition of that?
So yeah, that would be a committee of the whole. So we'd all just basically meet a half an hour beforehand.
And then I have a question about, so the calendar, the meetings would be first and third Tuesday of the month, and the Policy Committee would meet on Wednesday, the first Wednesday of the month.
Correct. That's again, it was something I had proposed a couple of different variations to the committee. This is the one that the committee felt consensus around, was doing the week on, week off. But those, it's open for suggestions, conversations, and so forth. I think the biggest thing that the aha moment from the committee was specifically putting policy, instead of trying to put two committees on a Tuesday, putting policy on a different day did two things for us. One, it gave it its own space, so it never feels rushed, and it also created an intentional space because it's not on a Tuesday. There's no possible way for committee work, policy committee work, to come to regular board action on the same night. It will always have at least several days in between, so that the full board would have the opportunity to review any work that the committee does, and if they have questions, they would be able to raise those either ahead of time or pull it out of consent at the regular board meeting.
And then the proposed change to the structure of the committee, explain that part. So like there's, like in the committees, there's 3 board members on the committee. we're going to add staff members and community members and they're going to have voting privileges?
It's up for discussion. So at this point, I just want to point, as a point of clarification, because this is like a lot, I realize. So like when we do committees, the committees aren't approving items like to be approved. They're like approving things to move forward to the full board. So that's one thing just to kind of consider. That was something we kind of hashed through in governance. I just want to transparently share that kind of line of thinking. The reason, I brought up asking the board if we would include staff and or community participation in our committees. And the reason for that is I'm actually going to credit Board Member Wong. I thought you shared some really great insight when he talked about how much value added staff brought when we had representation from each kind of grade level. So like elementary, intermediate, and high school provides a lot of context and information for the types of decisions that we make. And I do just want to point out too that there's past precedent. When I first was elected, so like 2 years ago to the board, we did have staff and community staff at least participation on the board. And I shared the experience that Board Member Wong shared, where I felt there was a lot of value added by committee members who were district staff. I asked if we could include community participation. Looking at area models, our municipality uses community members predominantly in their committees. The drawback to this is meeting quorum. And so I thought it would, if it's the will of the board, if we did bring on a community member, I'm going to use that in the singular. The logic was if we could at least open it up for one person, that's a really great way to bring people on, kind of show people like how the district works. It's another opportunity for folks to be engaged. However, it's not something that is a must-have part of the proposal. We could pass the new committee structure, and whoever makes the motion can suggest whatever structure or makeup they prefer.
Yeah, so my first part about the community structure, on one level, how a board organizes itself to do the broad work that it's supposed to do is one thing. I remember a couple meetings back, Board Member Wong talked about how, there was a change from what was before to this. As a community member trying to follow and track the issues that happen in the school district, I'll go back to years before this was changed. You kind of learn the structure and format, and then so you change again. I see some of the reasons, but you get to a point at which, as a community member following some of these issues, it's just bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy. And so, there can be something that can be gained by reorganizing, but then again, when we're just adding these other layers, and if there's 7 members and there's 3 members on each committee, when it comes to the committee work, sometimes it's that parliamentary procedure process that some things won't get out of committee. So they will not make it to the full board. So that's that voting and quorums and things like that, so that matters. But adding more members and then the voting process, I understand as an educational professional, to be able to be present and give feedback to items that the board will take up. That is expert knowledge that is necessary. But there's a space of which board members are proceeding with the business they've been elected to. And so, so that last part with the proposed changes to the structure, because the meetings are open, people always come. I thought it was the process that the committee chair has the ability to recognize those that come and allow to speak. On that issue, I would just think that it needs to be consistent, that if staff members, whoever comes to public, that they would know that they would be able to speak and not be ignored. But that's my concern. That's my thought about the changing the structure to committee so that there's full participation. Because if a community member comes out and sits for 4 hours, as I have done before, and after the closed session, I'm really looking that as we make these changes, things could be streamlined and the business can be handled in a regular order.
Thank you so much for your comments. I'm going to move on. Board Member Amy Levy has been waiting quite a while, and then I'm going to go to Board Member Wong.
So first, I just want to start by thanking everyone who assisted me in re-entering the meeting after my device died. Much appreciated team effort. So a couple concerns. One, I don't think we should decide anything tonight. I know it said action to be determined. And again, I just want to stress my concern that anything that we're going to take action on I firmly believe needs to be posted as soon as possible. And the day before, I don't deem as soon as possible, so that we can have community input in these decisions. All right. So as we are discussing this, I love the layout that is down. I still have some questions, and I'm not sure where I sit on the makeup of the committee. And I am suggesting that when we are ready to take action on this, which again, I don't think should be tonight, is that we consider doing this in phases. So I think phase 1 should be what is laid out. Dr. Kieser, thank you for putting this together. And the we handle business on weeks 1 and week 3. We split out policy on Wednesday. And Dr. Kieser foreshadowed that would give people time to digest any edits that came to policy before the board takes action. I think adding a change in committee structure on top of that might be too much at once, and we may not get a real sense of if this will work or not, i.e. it might work if we phased it in instead of changing everything all at once.
Thank you very much for those comments. I took a lot of notes down. I love the idea of phases. Thank you for that. Board Member Wong?
First of all, thank you, Dr. Kieser, for putting this together. And I think it was a productive meeting in the governance when we discussed this. And I believe, sir, I'm the only board member that's actually been through both committee structures. I believe, is that correct? Were you on there? Yeah, you were on there. So you understand this, and having done that for, I think, a couple of years, the value that I had from, like I had mentioned before, or you had mentioned, having staff members on that committee was extremely valuable, and it helped me to understand more, especially being a new member. And the other part is that I know that in today's board makeup, that the majority are in the educational field or educators, which is not always going to be the norm. And when you have non-educational board members, there's a little bit more of a learning curve, especially acronyms. So I think that when you get into these situations, when you're starting to approve, whether it's curriculum or budgets or whatever it might be, having some staff members there from all levels of education is extremely helpful and important. I also think that having the staff members on there, the ones that we had on our committee, were extremely dedicated and really put in a great effort and were diligent in being at all the meetings. The problem we ran into was the community members, it was hit or miss. And I think that was part of the problem we ran into was with quorum, and I think we saw it with one of the other committees as well. So I would caution on that. I think that the staff members see, I don't know if I would say privileged was the term I'd use, but perhaps it was that they were on the committee. They took it very seriously. So I think that it could go a long ways to help with staff morale as well.
Thank you so much for those comments, Board Member Wong. Board Member Amy Levy, go ahead, please.
So as Board Member Wong was talking, I'm throwing this out there. Would we consider offering an addendum for staff or community members that are serving on committees? I think it is something to consider, because if we want consistent participation and committee staff and community members are providing a valuable service to us, should that be compensated and at what level?
Thank you so much for that. So, so far, oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Vice President Sean Levy.
Yeah, so another question. I understand some of the things and some of the changes, and I'm fine with most of them. But as to say again, are the staff members prohibited from coming to the meetings now? Because I still want to get back to the other issue. It's 9/28. No matter if you were a volunteer or you decided to come, that's an unrealistic work day. And especially if you're getting an addendum for it, then you definitely should come because you're being paid to be there. But I think that as far as the governance process, as it takes hold, and when we are asking educators to come after work and put in more work, and just think about, we are a new board, so definitely things can change. But looking at the past history, That's one part that I'm just concerned about, the time and the time commitment that we're realistically asking people. I mean, we are elected, so that's why we're here. And then also, I used to be a social studies teacher, and the messy work of policy making and how some things are left out, and it seems like we spent 6 weeks for what, and here we are. That's just a level of frustration sometimes that people could be annoyed by when they put that time in and things come out differently. And so sometimes when you involve people in decision making and their roles aren't clear, there's a misunderstanding on what their participation and involvement would be. So I think those things need to be clarified if we were to even consider involving people in that manner.
Thank you very much. So I just want to share out some notes, and then I'm going to ask for any other questions, thoughts, or a motion. From what I'm hearing, there has been an idea thrown out that we should take this item as information only to bring back to a future meeting. Another item that I heard is it sounds like there's some consensus for the most part of appreciation of the proposed schedule and the proposed committee structure in terms of teaching, learning, equity, business and finance policy, and then personnel. Is that correct? More or less consensus there? Okay. There has been a suggestion to pilot and then phase in a reconsideration of the committee structure. And I guess my 2 cents in this would be that if we are at a future meeting where we take action, if that's the route that we go, depending on whatever motion is coming here, I would ask that if we are going to go with the phase in, perhaps we send a survey out to either or district staff, community members to see, because I empathize with the clarity of structure and being intentional and purposeful with people's time. Oh, and I forgot the other item too going along with that is a consideration of possible addendum pay if we do decide whether it's at the same time or in a phased-in approach to bring in additional participants to the committee. I think I touched on everything. Did I miss anything or any other thoughts? Go ahead, please.
Oh, I am not in consensus with the proposed change to the structure of committee makeup.
Thank you very much. So not unanimous consensus on proposed committee structure. Are there any other, I'm so sorry, there are other questions and comments. So please, Board Member Anderson, go ahead.
So for me, if you guys think that's going to be kind of more efficient, I'd be for it. But I do want to get the community input on it and also see about how staff feels about possibly joining in some of these committee structures and see if they think it's worth their time, because it does make for a long day if they are at school and then they come over to Colac and spend a couple hours there. Because I do find it valuable to have someone from inside the district getting their viewpoint, and also possibly looking at even community members, because like you said, the city council, they have their committees and they have community members that are in there. So you're getting different viewpoints from different people. And I would be in favor of just postponing this to a next meeting to get that community input.
Thank you very much, Board Member Anderson. Board Member Delgado.
So I'm in agreement with most of what board members have stated. I like the new restructure. I do like Board Member Levy's point of phasing it out and maybe doing a pilot first. I'm a little concerned about, okay, how would we handle doing like a payment for committee members that are from the outside, like from either staff or community. And also I'm a little confused on whether they would have any type of voting rights when anything is passing to the to the full board. I like the idea of hearing them out and allowing participation, like if they attend, because I think that having just one member of the community be in the committee is not representative of all. Again, the same thing with staff members. You know, I really like the idea of opening that door for, you know, people to be able to attend the meetings and be able to participate and share their opinions, because I think that that just gives us, you know, different perspectives to take into account when we're making the decision. But again, you know, I would really like to hear too what Vice President Levy has concerns about the structure. I'm interested in hearing what his thoughts are on that.
Go ahead, Vice President Levy.
No, I mean, as we're moving along, it seems like, you know, there's consensus about most things. My only concern about the structure is when you present decision-making processes that are unclear, people, you know, the time of people is valuable. And so to understand what you're really being asked to do and what your input really means and how it will be considered is important. Like I said, there is the parliamentary procedure. So sometimes ideas don't make it out of committee, so they don't get to the full board. And like I said, that was the purpose of electing board members, to handle that business. This is a little bit different than city council. And I say that because with school issues, there's often passion. You just look at our return to in-person learning, or how would we handle the positivity rate with the coronavirus. You have to make a lot of different decisions. And so as you're moving things along, you know, our citizens have the right to make comment and be a part of the decision-making, but that's what this board was elected to do. So in some ways, spreading that out, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's redundant. It creates a longer process that could be more confusing and even more frustrating. And so looking at the survey as it was shared and the positive trend that the board is on and the whole district, I just see a place for greater frustrations if we go into a committee structure without considering those things. I am not anti-democratic or against allowing people to participate, but you know, that could just be the educator and school administrator in me.
No, thank you for that. And just for everybody listening, to clarify, everybody always has a right to attend any public board meeting and can speak on any agenda item. They just need to be acknowledged by the chair. And then I think if we do move forward on restructuring committees, that's something that I think my personal opinion would be that we should make very explicit at the beginning of those meetings, because I don't know that that's necessarily common knowledge. And as you pointed out earlier, when you're talking about like clarity and expectations and how things work, I think that's an important piece to clarify, because we do want to make sure we value people's time. Board Member Delgado, did you have any other thoughts before I move on? Oh, for sure, yeah.
No, I guess that's the last thing that you said about, you know, allowing participants or people that attend the meetings to participate in meetings if they have, if the chair acknowledges them. I guess because we have been, and me being, you know, I still consider myself a new board member only because we haven't really had like normal meetings. So that hasn't been my experience, you know, where we're able to acknowledge participants that are in meetings or committee meetings for them to have any type of input on what we're, you know, talking about. So I don't know, just put it out there that I guess it just hasn't been my experience.
No, thank you very much. It's very valuable. Dr. Kieser?
I just wanted to, and I apologize if I missed this comment in terms of the structure. So we have scheduled to reconvene the governance board or governance committee on May 4th after budget and planning, so that we would be able to have a space to bring all the comments back. So there isn't a pressure to make a decision. It was purposely put put on there for discussion and action in the event that we didn't know as a committee where the conversations would go, but the intent was to gather feedback and bring it back to the governance committee next week, so.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Kieser. At this time, are there other thoughts, questions, comments, or a motion? Seeing nothing in the chat. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there doesn't need to be a motion to bring the information back to the committee.
Okay, so we don't need a motion to postpone if we wanted to do that? Okay, sounds good to me. So if any board members who are not on the governance committee would like to attend the May 4th meeting for governance, please do so we can have a kind of continue this robust discussion. And, it's obviously really important to the functionality of our board, and it, I think, deserves the time and attention that we're giving it. So thank you all very much for that. All right. All right, moving on then to the consent agenda. I know we do need to remove item 7E, as we did not get to it, I believe, in policy committee. At this time, I'll entertain, does anybody else want to remove any items from the consent agenda? Oh, board member Amy Levy, go ahead, please.
I would like to pull off from the consent agenda item F as in Frank and L as in Levy.
Thank you very much. So at this time, we are, and I'm just going to summarize and ask for anybody else who has any comments. Right now, it's being proposed that we remove altogether item 7E to a later date, and that we pull items F as in Frank and L from the consent agenda. Would anybody else like to pull any items from our consent agenda this evening? Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda without items 7E, 7F, or 7L.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion at this time? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right, consent agenda passes unanimously. If we could then move to employment recommendations, Exhibit A and B. Board member Amy Levy, what questions and concerns did you want to bring up?
So my concern, and hopefully other board members have been following kind of the coaches' pay issue. I am so excited that we have a new matrix going forward. It seems as though the only thing that we unanimously agreed upon is that it is very fuzzy how the addendum numbers were generated for the current addendums that are listed. And so I am not comfortable approving numbers that we can't justify, we can't reproduce. And we've been having this discussion for 2 months. I appreciate the difficult position that the administration is in, that the coaches in question are in. None of this is fair. None of this is easy. But if we identify that there is a problem, I can't just go along with passing it just because it's convenient. So I cannot support Exhibit A, the coaches portion. I would like to propose a motion to approve Employee Recs Exhibit B for the extracurricular portion only. And the reason that I am able to support that is that those amounts are separate from whatever matrix was used to come up with the coach pay. So those are separate issues.
All right, since board member Jacobs isn't here as chair, I don't know if Vice Chair Wong or if anybody else wanted to speak to that at all. And I just want to clarify, board member Levy, when you said exhibit, did you mean Exhibit B minus? Because I'm looking at Exhibit A, and I think maybe I misheard you. I'm sorry. Okay.
If I misspoke, my apologies.
No, I'm sorry.
I move to approve Exhibit B of Employee Recs with the extracurricular portion only.
And would that include a motion to approve employee Exhibit A as well?
No, that was already handled on
Oh.
consent agenda. The only thing that I asked to be removed was Exhibit B.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, Ms. Shope, are we okay with that in our records?
I will go back and make that change. I didn't understand with the removal from the consent agenda that only Exhibit B was being removed, so I will make that correction.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. Okay, so there's a motion on the table to approve Exhibit B, extracurricular only. Is there a second?
I second that.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any discussion at this time? Go ahead, Board Member Wong.
Yes, I'd like to address the discussion that we had in personnel regarding this Exhibit B and the coaches. And I think it's important to understand, and I understand that.
Order, I so apologize, Member Wong, but the motion does not cover coaches. So we would have to have the discussion of that if there's a separate motion to approve the coaches. The motion on the floor is specific to Exhibit B, extracurricular items.
Okay.
Okay, so if there are there any other thoughts or comments or discussion at this time on Exhibit B, extracurricular? Which then, to clarify, does not, if somebody wants to make a motion then for the other piece, we can still entertain that as a board. Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving employment recommendation Exhibit B, extracurricular only, please say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously to approve Exhibit B, extracurricular only. Before we move on, is there any other discussion on this item? Board Member Wong, did you want to address your comments?
Regarding, you're talking regarding specifically the coaches' addendums, correct? Okay. Just want to explain what happened in what we discussed in personnel earlier in regards to this. And while we had talked about the fact that, trying to be fair and equitable for all, and we understand that, we do have a matrix out there for the next year going forward. And looking at this year, at what's happened so far, we've been told that roughly 80% of the addendums have been paid out to the coaches and the advisors for this year. There's 20% that have not. And I understand the concern about the numbers that are out there, which were actually reduced. And I think this was discussed, and I think it was based upon other coaches that had been paid this year as well for in the similar track or levels. So with all that being said, I think that it's unfortunate, to me it would be very unfortunate because of the coach and the timing of the year that suddenly we say that, okay, this coach over here has got paid X, you're going to get paid Y, just because the board decided to vote because we don't feel as though the numbers are right. We know that we're going to be fixing this problem. This was addressed, and we discussed this over the last couple of months, which I think is a great move in the right direction. My concern is that we are, I guess, picking sides here, or there's individuals that will be treated inequitable based upon this decision of not getting this voted through for this year. And like I said, this is not a practice that we've wanted to have, and this was also the addendum for the other 80% that were, there was plenty of coaches that this board had voted on, I should say most of this board, had voted on previously in the year. So just wanted to kind of bring that to the surface.
Thank you very much. Are there any other thoughts or questions on the subject matter?
Yeah, since I'm new to this, there's a couple questions I have. As I followed a little bit as it's been moving through. First of all, just want to be clear, when are coaches paid? Are they paid during the season or at the end of the season?
Thank you.
Hi, yeah, so the coaches are paid at the end of the season.
So right now, and I know that there was a change in the order of sports because of COVID. So seasons are ending and coaches are not getting paid,
So,
or it's in the air.
so what happens is we issue the addendums and we get the addendums back to us. And then once the season, at the conclusion of the season, we release that payment.
And is it also that coaches were told, given addendums with one number, and now as we've gone through this process to find out what the numbers were on the matrices, that the number they were told is going to be something different than what they were told?
So,
Possibly, I mean, like, or,
yeah, so we have not been able to communicate to the coaches. So with the board recommendations, that is public, so they're able to see on board docs when they're being recommended to go to the board for their assignments. And so we have not been able to communicate to them that any numbers were changing or anything like that. So we continue to recommend, based on the 2015 and 16 matrix, to ensure that those folks were also equitable with the staff that were already paid out addendums.
so the numbers that are being used, like I've seen the matrices, there are people who signed on to do something for a number, and now that number is in dispute, and it may fall somewhere between what they were told and something lower than that.
So it could be a couple of different things. So it could be somebody who's been in that assignment year after year, and has received the same addendum amount for that. For the purpose, to give some context about the football coach, that is somebody who went through the recruitment process for that position, and that position was posted with a salary range of the lower end up to $10,000, because that $10,000 was an amount that with previous administrations had made that exception, was approved, and so that amount continued on at the top of the salary range for the head football coach.
Is that what was listed on the addendum that the person actually received, was the top number?
It was, and that was what was recommended to the board. However, after it was denied, we went back and we talked with him, and he was open to having that salary decreased to $8,000 that matched a previous addendum that had been approved by the board.
Vice President Levy, in terms of your broader question about where we are in the process, so without a motion on the coaching addendums, it would come back, my understanding of parliamentary procedure, unless it's voted up or down, it would come back to the full board the next time, because no decision has been made on those remaining addendums. If in the meantime a motion to approve the new matrix were to be enacted immediately, then yes, the individuals that are on this addendum potentially would get a different amount than what they were expecting when they first said yes to the assignment.
So kind of one of the questions that as I'm, first I'm looking at Exhibit B, and for the sports that are listed, are those seasons completed now, or are they completing in the next?
Mr. Beard isn't on here to give how all the alternate fall sports seasons play out, but some have concluded and some will be concluding within the next week or two. Spring season has started, so those addendums will be coming, if not already on, will be coming, and again, we get the approval and then they get paid out at the end.
Right. So as an example, like football, still like one competition or two competitions left?
Correct.
All right, and so then maybe a business operations question. If the season ended this Friday, as that was the last competition, are they paid the next pay period, or is it at a different time? Just in terms of spacing.
Yeah, that's a great question, yes.
Okay. And I think I'm going to try to answer, I think, maybe what your underlying question is as well. That addendum could not be issued until the board approves it. So if the board doesn't approve it, we could not pay it at the end of the season. But I think what I'm hearing, and please correct me, is that you're asking, when we say that 80% of these addendums have been paid and 20% have not, that we have not necessarily completed 80% of our sports and activities, and when we say those have been paid, what we're talking in those addendums have been issued. They were board approved. They went through the recommendation process. So that is, in sense, they've been approved. They will be paid as soon as their season is done. It doesn't necessarily mean that they've received that money in their check. But if we make this effective now, it would affect any of those future ones that we're trying to get approved.
Right, because, well, kind of what I'm getting to is that, when people sign on to do a job, they do expect to get paid. So if they're supposed to get paid on Friday, they don't want to hear your money's coming next Friday. So one of the things I'm trying to figure out is, like, let's say if everything was regular, when would the addendums that are on this page, when would they be paid? Because, like, say, if there's no decision tonight, but these addendums would not be paid until the third week in May, there's time. And so sometimes, when there's a sense of urgency, sometimes you have to back up if there's space. That's kind of where I'm at in this, and just trying to get an understanding of where are the deadlines and the gates for decision making.
Okay. The payroll processing deadlines would be the Friday prior to payday. So if the season were ending today and we had this approved, he would be paid next Friday. But we always cut off payroll for processing for everything approved. So it would be contingent both on the board dates for approval and getting that information on our pay cycle. But the easiest way ends the week before payday.
And this is a separate thing about, like, the other addendum, because, tonight's my first night. I've seen the other addendum and the other matrices, but I do have questions I like to ask. So for me, there's a state of unreadiness about approving it tonight, because I would just like to have that space to ask those questions and, and just get that understanding.
To clarify, are you talking about item L? When you're talking about the other matrices, I just want to make sure I understood correctly. Okay, so we're looking at, so like the matrices for the athletic clubs and activity structure. That's cool.
That would be item L for me, yes.
All right, perfect.
It's my first time seeing it, I mean, I've seen it, but, the first meeting.
Totally understand. No, we've all been there. So, all right. So I'm looking. So with regard to item F, I guess I just want to check in. First, I want to ask Vice President Levy, do you have any additional questions on the remaining items on Exhibit B?
No.
Okay. Are there any other board members who would like to offer thoughts, questions, or comments at this time? Okay, go ahead, Board Member Amy Levy.
Yes. Board Member Wong, thank you for opening and setting the context. I would like to add to that is that the reason that some of these, from my perspective, I want to be clear about that. I only speak for myself. The reason, from my perspective, some of these addendums were approved is because I don't believe anyone, now I'm going to speak for everyone, I don't believe anyone on the board is interested in micromanaging anyone. So when the addendums came in, nothing seemed out of place. I trusted, I'm going to go back to only speaking for myself, I trusted the administration and approved it. It's not until red flags came when there was a difference on the addendums where one person was making $10,000, another head coach was slated to make, I believe, anywhere from $1,600 to $36,000, which required me to ask additional questions. And Dr. Kieser, please correct me if I'm wrong. The understanding that I think we all came to is that the potential that there was drifting away from the 2015 matrices in determining the amount was very high. And at that point, I did not feel comfortable approving any further addendums until they could be justified. And I was very clear with saying it might make complete sense for this one coach to make $10,000 and the next highest coach of what we had seen, not out of all, because we haven't seen all of them, to make $3,600 if someone could explain that the responsibilities were that much different, the time commitment, etc. And in my opinion, my grave disappointment, in my opinion, is that the administration did not address the current situation and how it was a mess, and instead focused on how we can make it better in the future. So without an understanding or an attempt to adjust or clean up or correct the current mess, that's why I can't support the numbers that are being brought before me. And I get that that puts a lot of people in awkward positions, but I can't support something just because it's convenient for other people.
And to your point, Board Member Levy, I don't disagree with anything that you stated in your summary, so I concur with your summary that you have.
Thank you very much. And Board Member Delgado.
You know, I've been following this issue, and it's been months already. And, you know, I totally agree with Board Member Levy on the fact that, and actually I appreciate her because I think she's the one that noticed, you know, those discrepancies and the mistakes. And it's unfortunate that, you know, this was not brought up or at least acknowledged by administration at the time that was brought up to the board. You know, I think that if this would have been brought up, that there was a discrepancy, but unfortunately, we had already approved it. And you know, even though I agree with Board Member Levy, I do disagree on the part where I feel that we are being very unjust and unfair to a person that has already done his job with the acknowledgement that he was going to be paid a certain amount. That amount has already been lowered, you know, to kind of match. But still, this person came into that role with the thinking and the perception that that was going to be his pay. And it's so unfair that we're holding his payment because there was a mistake that he had nothing to do with. And you know, I don't know. If I was in that position, I would probably be quitting right now because it's not fair. It's not fair that we're putting a person's salary on the edge only because there was a mistake that he had nothing to do with. So I appreciate all, and I appreciate, you know, that it was brought up and that administration is now doing something about it. That going forward, which is, for me, that's the only expectation that I can have. I can't correct a mistake that was done before that was approved, that we oversight it because it is it's board's responsibility to look at those numbers. And unfortunately, it was not caught. And I will take the responsibility that it's my part on that I did not catch it, and that none of us, you know, as a board, caught it on time. But I think it's wrong that we're trying to resolve that mistake or make it better by putting someone else's salary on the line. They don't deserve that. So that's just my point, how I see it. And hopefully, you know, we can resolve it the sooner the better. And moving forward, we're going to probably be more cautious and holding administration responsible, you know, on making sure that we're doing our salaries and we're paying equitably to everyone, because that's one of our goals, right? So I don't know. I would just say moving forward, that's the expectation. However, you know, the coach deserves his payment. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Board Member Delgado. And Vice President Levy, I'm going to pass on this like sacred duty to you that hopefully we'll never have to use again, which is to, if you wouldn't mind making a motion to please extend our meeting time, either once by 30 minutes or twice by 60, and I'll withhold my opinion on your choice to do either of those.
I make a motion that we extend our meeting by 60 minutes. That's it.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Board Member Levy.
I'm hopeful we won't need the entire 60 minutes.
I appreciate your comment. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, thank you, and I apologize for interjecting, but please go ahead with your comment or question, Vice President Levy.
So my understanding, past administrations looked at the 15-16 matrices and brought to former boards of education composed different numbers, and those numbers were approved. And so when this coach was offered this addendum, that addendum was based off of the last number for a coach in a similar position based on, well, I don't know, but that's how that number came about. And then as this has gone back and forth, that number 10, which was on the addendum, the individual said, well, make it 8, or willing to take less than what was 10. I think that, I don't think that the number, whether it was 10 or 8, was not, I don't think that's really the issue as I'm understanding and listening to the debate. But then also, too, this is kind of that messiness that, obviously someone has done a job and they need to be paid. Right now we're talking about what they're going to get paid. They thought they were getting one thing and something else is there. That's why I asked the question about when would the payment be delayed? Because this is something that needs to be done. But when are we at a point where that was due yesterday? I know that the understanding and the surety and having this done would be nice, but if we're not yet past the time when the person should be paid, when is that time period? Because I would like this to be done before then.
It looks like Mr. Beard was able to join us. Mr. Beard, would you be able to address Vice President Levy's questions about the season endings and pay schedules?
Yes, I can, but I did not hear the question though. So
no problem, Vice President Levy.
In regular order, when would this coach be paid? The football coach. What is what would be the pay date that this person is due? If it's not tomorrow, then we're not late. But like I said, that's a horizon by which we should be seeking a resolution.
Correct. So what happens is the season ends, coaches collect all their equipment, uniforms and all those things, puts those away, they let me know, and then I send an email to finance saying the football season has now been completed. That usually takes about a week or so before I send that email, and then it is usually on the next pay date, depending on the day when that happens.
Right. So I was a golf coach at one point in time when I taught in Columbus City schools, and what you just described is a process that, say, the last competition could be on 4/27, and even though that's the end of competition, that's not the end of the season. The end of the season for the coach to get paid is actually when the coach tells you, Mr. Beard, I've got all the uniforms and everything, we're done, and then you send an email?
Correct.
Okay. So again, I'm just asking, in a horizon of time, the last competition is on this day. On average, when is that usually? How?
I will. Football season actually ends this Friday. The actual competitions end this Friday. So they will collect their equipment, I would say within the next week. He will let me know that, and then I will send the email over to finance. And soon as that happens, it will fall on the next pay date. So there's usually about a week after the last competition of when that process happens.
Okay, Joel, this is Joanne Armstrong, sorry. There are additional sports that are on these coaching addendums. Can you tell us real quickly if volleyball, wrestling, girls soccer, hockey, tennis, baseball, or softball have concluded their seasons? Because they're
Yes,
directly impacted as well.
But yeah, so girls and boys volleyball season was completed. Their last competition was, I believe, it was April 12th or April 10th, somewhere in there that weekend. Girls swimming ended a few days before that. It'll be probably about April 6th. Baseball and softball just began. They played their first games today. Wrestling ended in the winter. That probably be end of February, somewhere in there. What was the other one? Tennis, boys tennis just started, but girls tennis concluded earlier this month.
Okay, thank you. So just for the clarification, if we're looking at this, the boys varsity assistant coach has completed his full season but has not been approved for payment, as well as the hockey, and you said the girls tennis, is that correct?
Correct. Excuse me, I forgot hockey. Hockey is a winter sport. That season is complete as well.
Okay, and wrestling you said was complete, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I just wanted to give some context that we're talking about more than just one coach on this when we're talking about these addendums. So thank you for hearing me.
Question, are there any other coaches who have signed on for one number and then, said they're going to take a different number? Or is that only in one situation?
Only in one situation.
All right.
Thank you very much, Vice President Levy. Board Member Delgado?
And I'm not sure if this was answered already, but, taking advantage that Mr. Beer is on the line. When coaches come in or takes a position to coach for the year, when is their payment proposed to them? When is that decision made? Is it before they take on the position? Do they already know that that's the amount that they're getting paid? Or is it after they have taken the position?
It is usually after they take in the position and they receive their addendum. With a coach that has been in the position for multiple years, they already know what that addendum is from year to year.
Okay, and I don't know, just out of curiosity, the current coach, the current football coach, I'm assuming that he's aware of everything that is happening, right?
That is correct.
Okay, what is his current state? What does he think? What does he feel that this is bringing to
Point
him?
of order, we may need to go into closed session if we're going to drill down into personal issues with one singled out employee.
Thank you, Board Member Levy. Board Member Delgado, is that something, I guess I'm looking for a consensus of the board if we need to go into closed session?
We did not post for closed session for
Right,
the
so
full
then
board.
we'd have to, okay. So I guess if,
Fine.
no, you're fine. I was just, no, and actually, no, I want to honor what you were saying, and I appreciate where you're going with that, Board Member Delgado. So I would just say that if we, if the full board would like to go into closed session, then that's something that we could just not take action on this evening and then repost for a closed session at an upcoming meeting. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that, if that is a determining factor in how we move forward this evening. Board Member Delgado, are you good?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Vice President Levy?
Just a clarification. Like I said, I see that they're, like I said, based on each sport, we're not dealing with one sport, football. There's other sports and other coaches there. Have we currently not paid someone who should have been paid by now? Are we late with someone's check? And which sports are those?
So the sports that Ms. Armstrong had just talked through with Mr. Beard, there are some sports that have closed out.
And these people are waiting to get paid?
Correct.
Thank you very much. Board Member Amy Levy.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so
Sorry,
sorry.
Michelle.
Did you have something additional?
I was just, do you want me to?
Yes, please.
Okay. And Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're saying boys varsity volleyball has concluded. Head wrestling has concluded. Girls
Yes.
hockey, boys hockey, girls tennis. And
Yes.
Wrestling.
Yep, and that's it. I said wrestling, didn't
Oh.
I? I thought I said that at the beginning. So volleyball and wrestling.
I'm not looking at the printout, but is girls swimming on there?
No, girls, there's nobody on swimming. So these are just the ones that have been pending. So clarification again, boys volleyball, wrestling, hockey, girls tennis, and that's it. That have concluded their season already, and the coaches have not been paid.
Yes, those seasons are completed, yes.
Are there problems with those addendums and those amounts?
Those amounts, to my understanding, are all representative of what was on the 15-16 matrix, and they had not been adjusted?
Correct.
Okay. So those follow, but at prior board recommendation, they were not comfortable approving any athletic addendums until the issue was addressed.
All right, thank you very much. I'm just going to go to Board Member Levy at this time, and if anybody else has questions or comments or thoughts or a motion or anything else, you can throw it in the chat. Go ahead.
Very briefly, Board Member Delgado, I just want to apologize. When I jumped in, it was very abrupt, and I just want to be clear that was in no way to talk over you. No correction. It was to talk over you, but only in a protective manner to protect the board and the employee, because I didn't want anything to be discussed about a specific employee without us being in closed session. So I just wanted to be publicly clear about that. And then I just want to say this point, just one more time. The reason that I was uncomfortable with moving forward with any of the addendums is because the work that was put into the future matrices that I so appreciate, in my opinion, was not done with the current situation. So to answer the question from my perspective, I don't know if the other numbers are valid and it's just one or two outliers, because that deep dive and that explanation, even though we've been having this conversation since February, was never brought back for the current situation. The energy was put into the future situation.
Thank you for the clarification on both points. Any other thoughts, questions at this time? Okay, so at this time, we have some choices. We can move on. We could make a motion one way or the other to take action on the remainder of Exhibit B. Or like I said, we could just move on to the next consent agenda item that was pulled, which is athletic and clubs activities addendum structure proposal.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Exhibit B as it's listed.
I will second that.
I'd like a roll call vote, please.
All right, we have a motion and a second, as well as a request for a roll call vote. Is there any other discussion at this time? And then to clarify, Board Member Wong, it's for the full exhibit, is that correct?
That's correct. Well, with the remainder of it, because we already approved the first portion of it.
Right, yeah, I'm sorry. What I meant to say is the full remaining. Sorry, thank you very much for that clarification. Okay, hearing no other questions or discussion, Ms. Shope, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Delgado,
Aye.
Amy Levy,
Nay.
Sean Levy,
Nay.
John Wong,
Aye.
Spencer Anderson,
Aye.
And President Miller.
Aye.
I have 4 ayes and 2 nays.
All right, thank you very much. And at this time, we are moving on to 7L, which is the Athletic and Clubs/Activities Addendum Structure Proposal. At this time, Board Member Levy, I think, right, you asked to pull this one off. I was going to ask to pull it off as well because I know it's a high-interest item that just came through committee tonight. So I'll withhold thoughts and questions and defer to you first.
Thank you. I will attempt to be brief. Okay, so Policy 171.2, Agenda Preparation and Dissemination, clearly states that the agenda and agenda-related documents shall be posted on the district website on Board Docs 4 days prior to the regularly scheduled business and special meeting. It was very concerning to me when I brought that up in committee that Dr. Kieser's, and I'm paraphrasing, please feel free to correct me if I get this wrong, Dr. Kieser said that he consulted with counsel and that we weren't doing anything wrong. I think we have to set ourselves to a higher standard, and we could probably get away with semantics because the presentation was made available on Board Docs as executive content. But in my reading of that policy, the spirit of it is that all the information should be made available to the public 4 days in advance. So what we are potentially doing this evening is to act on a motion, to act on an item that the public has not had a chance to have full consideration of and to come down and express their opinion, which I think we all agree is something that we welcome and encourage. And posting it the day before, when it was ready and available days early, is very concerning to me. I think that it does not live up to the spirit of transparency and that we should welcome input from community members. And if Dr. Kieser would like to address, so everyone can hear why the decision was made not to post a presentation that was available, I would love to hear that.
All right, thank you, Board Member Levy. Oh, did you want, go ahead.
Thank you, Board Member Levy. And as I shared in committee, that the posting the board reports on Board Docs gave full transparency to the issues and the conversations that are going to be discussed at the board level to the public. The information that was provided to the full board was in reference to wanting the board's request since the beginning to make sure that they had enough time to digest the information. The information for the public was in advance of the full board meeting. Board President Miller and I have had a conversation about this, and we had made this decision when inquiries to is this following our policy and state law. I always refer back to our district council to make sure that we are within legal guidance. I would challenge anyone to compare our practices, both all of prior to me coming here within the past year, as well as during this year, to other districts, either near or far from us. I feel we are very transparent. I feel that the decision was not in a spirit of trying to be deflective or secretive to board or to the community. If the community has questions about what is the conversation, they have the same access to myself and the board to ask questions about that. And again, what I view my role as superintendent to the board is to ensure that the board has full knowledge and information to make an informed decision, which they're elected to do, and that the community is always available to participate in the board's work in public space.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kieser. But my question was, since the presentation was ready to go, why did you make the decision not to make it available to the public 4 days prior to the board potentially taking action?
Because I wanted to make sure that the board had it, and I followed that practice for the prior board meetings and had no questions about it, so there was no questions from board or community as to the practice that we had been following. So that's why I continued with the practice that this time, because since we made that change, there has not been an inquiry as to this. When I reviewed the policy and when I was asked about, are we following policy? Again, I reviewed that with district council, and we are well within both policy and state law around that. And to that end, we hold ourselves to a very high standard here in Beloit. I'm very proud of that, and I feel like we go the extra mile for our board and our community.
Thank you so much. And my final brief point is that providing it to the board and providing it to the community could have happened simultaneously.
And I would say that, we always reflect on the actions that we've taken. And as I mentioned in committee, Board President Miller and I have had a conversation yesterday, and we may make changes again and move back to that. So every experience is a learning experience.
Thank you very much, Board Member Levy. I actually was planning to pull this item, so I do have some thoughts and questions, but I want to open it up. Do other board members have thoughts, questions, comments on item 7L?
My simple comment, because I don't want to go all into this tonight, was just that with this being my first scene of it and not having the opportunity to have the discussions and kind of back and forth and as we looked at that restructure of how the meetings would be presented, sometimes like the first meeting would be like a workshop where people discuss things like this, and then there's the time when they're going to take official action. So to me, that's kind of my example. And then even for Mr. Beard to join us tonight after 10 o'clock, that goes to my other point that we were making before about committee structure. But it's just that I have other questions about this as we kind of get into that I would like to ask about the presentation, and I really don't feel like, taking the meeting longer in that manner. So if we have time, like if this is supposed to start July 1, then if there's time to talk about that, then that's all I need.
Thank you so much for your comments. Any other questions, comments, or thoughts from other board members at this time? Oh, go ahead, Dr. Kieser.
Vice President Levy, I thank you for your comments, and absolutely, I mean, that definitely is the aspect of the board being able to pull items from consent and make any motion that they feel is appropriate for the board to take action on. And I have been in and worked with boards where the approach that you just mentioned was as such. You present and then you take action the following board meeting. And again, this is a learning process. And when I first came here, the concern was how long things took to get through the board. And so that's how we arrived here with having things go to committee and then to the full board that immediate night. So again, that's a conversation to have.
All right, thank you very much for that. I just want to, I agree, and I just want to, I guess, comment on your comments that absolutely everything is kind of a continuous process of evaluation and growth. And I did want to just I did just want to support your statement that you made. I also don't question the legality of having it on, as posted, the way it was posted. I do, though, agree with Board Member Levy about maybe just like the spirit of, of the policy as it was written, but I just wanted to make it clear that I fully support, what the conclusion that you and council arrived at in terms of the legality. And I did also just want to acknowledge that I know like the intention in no way reflects any kind of secrecy or resistance to transparency. I think this is something that we're feeling out, and I appreciate your willingness to, kind of hear that feedback and for us to kind of move forward productively. So we've heard two comments about item 7L on several topics, but what they both have in common is, I think, a request to postpone those items or that item. Are there any other comments or discussion before we hear a motion on item 7L? So if there is consensus, I guess at this time what I'm looking for is either a motion to postpone item 7L, the athletic and club/activities addendum structure proposal, or a motion to take action.
I move to postpone item 7L from the consent agenda to our next regular board meeting, which will be Tuesday, May 11th, 2021.
Second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion at this time? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, thanks. Looking forward to hearing more about that. So we have approved our consent agenda. Quick point, so for the discussion and information items, agenda item 8A, for future board meeting dates, I did just want to point out that there are 2 dates posted, and then if you are interested in attending, please let Michelle and or I know in case there's a quorum present and we need to post that there'll be a quorum of the board. This coming Thursday, April 29th from 12 to 1:30 p.m., there is a WASB Legal Roles and Responsibilities new board member orientation. I was reminded of that. Board member Delgado mentioned earlier that she still kind of felt like a new board member, and certainly coming on a school board during a pandemic is not a typical experience. So of course, anybody can attend those trainings. So I just wanted to throw that out there. The date again is Thursday, April 29th from 12 to 1:30 p.m. That is a virtual Legal Roles and Responsibilities WASB training for new board members. Additionally, same date, Thursday, April 29th from 5 p.m. to 6:15 p.m. There is a WEAC-sponsored new board member training. I know of at least 2 board members that will be in attendance, myself included. So if you are planning to come, please let me and or Michelle know so that we can post in case there is a quorum present. Having said that, let me jump over to the additional future board meeting dates. All right, so Planning and Budget Committee meets Tuesday, May 4th at 5:15 p.m., followed by the Governance Committee meeting, which just anybody can attend, and but is usually made up of the president and then the Oversight Chair and the Planning and Budget Chair, and that is Tuesday, May 4th at 6:30 p.m. or following the Planning and Budget Committee meeting. Oversight and Finance meets Tuesday, May 11th at 5 p.m. Policy and Personnel Committee meets next Tuesday, May 11th at approximately 6 p.m. or when Oversight and Finance concludes. Finally, we will have a regular board meeting Tuesday, May 11th at 7 p.m. approximately. Is there any other board business to conduct at this time? Then I want to offer an extra special thanks to everybody's time, patience, and dedication that we put into our very long meeting this evening. And without further comment, is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Awesome. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you all very much. The meeting concludes at 10:33 p.m. Take care.